This podcast is sponsored by Monarch Money. Have you been using Mint to manage your finances? Bad news, Mint shut down. The good news? There's a better alternative. Monarch Money. Mint users are turning to Monarch Money and loving it. Why? Because Monarch Money has built a new kind of personal finance app that's intuitive, insightful, ad-free, and prioritizes the user experience. Try it free for 30 days at monarchmoney.com/podcast. With a comprehensive view of all your accounts, Monarch makes it easy to stick to your budgets and achieve your goals. Easily customize your dashboard, automate rules for transactions, and more. Monarch's built-in collaboration feature lets you invite your partner at no extra cost. Monarch makes it easy to switch from Mint, import your data, and keep all your tags and categories intact. See why the Wall Street Journal named Monarch Money the best budgeting app overall. Get a 30-day free trial today when you go to monarchmoney.com/podcast. That's MONARCH money.com/podcast for your free trial. monarchmoney.com/podcast.
Attention podcast listener, we've got an exciting new podcast coming just for patrons of patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
Talking Futurama Season 2 Part 1 has begun exclusively for our $5 and up patrons on the Talking Simpsons Network. That's the first 10 episodes of Futurama coming to you once a week.
So just sign up for $5 a month at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons and you'll get Talking Futurama Season 2 and all of our limited miniseries, including the entirety of Talking Futurama Season 1. That's 13 episodes.
That is patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. Now please enjoy the rest of this podcast.
Cartoons from present and the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello everybody and welcome to What a Cartoon, home of cheese, clocks, chocolate, and neutrality. I'm your host, the not devoid of humor, Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today?
Henry Gilbert, laughing till I fall back.
Excellent. And today's episode is Animaniacs Episode 2. And today's episode is a special patron request by Philip Jacoby. In case you aren't aware of it, we have a $50 tier that's usually full, but if you're in it every, 4 months? Mm-hmm. If you're a patron on that level, you can choose an episode for us to do on What a Cartoon. And Philip chose Episode 2 of Animaniacs, and I assume he would have gotten around to Animaniacs sooner or later.
Sure.
But it's perfect that this is this week's episode because last week's episode was Bonkers, and these were the two competing shows. And Animaniacs was the one that was daring enough to take swipes at the competition. Bonkers did not have the guts.
They destroyed Bonkers, though. In by the time they made fun of Bonkers, it was just kicking a dead horse, really.
Bonkers was a corpse. But yes, I want to read Philip's little statement he wrote for us about why he chose this episode and series. So Philip says, I chose Animaniacs because it's a cartoon somewhat like my favorite Simpsons episodes, a show designed for no one in particular but the writers, and yet still managed to be strangely formative for certain groups of millennials. And like The Simpsons at its best, Animaniacs invites interest to a wider world of books, TV shows, and movies. After all, what 10-year-old is going to get the references to The Honeymooners and Vonnegut's Sirens of Titan in this episode? Plus, Wacko's World mentions Palestine as an independent country. What's not to like? And yes, we do love Animaniacs here at What a Cartoon. We podcasted about Animaniacs a couple years ago for Retronauts when the reboot was announced. So like in January of 2018.
Boy,
we did
still waiting on that.
Yep, I don't know where it is, but we are still waiting for that to just to see images of that. But we covered a bit of the history of Animaniacs in that podcast for another podcast, but now we're in full What a Cartoon mode, and that was even before What a Cartoon existed, so now we had the time to sit down and really figure out Animaniacs and look at a full episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've covered the things that followed up Animaniacs, like Freakazoid and the Pinky and the Brain solo series, but it's now good to go back to where it all began. Well, we also did Tiny Toons as our movie as well. So
and Tasmania is the one missing piece. It's the underrated show of that era that has not really been revived in any way.
No, that better be on HBO Max.
I hope so.
In the future.
That and some new Game of Thrones crap. But let's talk about the Animaniacs, the run of Animaniacs. So Animaniacs was a very long-running show for this era of animation. It aired from September 13th, 1993 to November 14th, 1998. It had a slightly longer shelf life than Tiny Toon Adventures, even if they had almost identical episode counts. So Tiny Toon Adventures had 100 and Animaniacs had 99. They were just spread out more.
If only they could have just stitched together a little more filler to get to 100.
It didn't matter because Nickelodeon essentially ran them as syndicated episodes anyways.
They sold the package. Having a 100th episode didn't prevent them from selling it into syndication, that's for sure.
And I think technically Wacko's Wish was the 100th episode.
Yeah, that's true.
I still need to see, and I'm almost positive it's on Hulu.
It is.
That could be a Christmas viewing for me this year.
Yeah, it's fine.
Too many songs.
I'll get to that later,
Okay.
I think. But yeah.
So I want to talk about the origins of Animaniacs. Now, if you've listened to our Tiny Toons podcast and our Pinky and the Brain podcast and our Freakazoid podcast, a lot of this is going to sound very familiar. Because a lot of the same people are behind Animaniacs that are behind those other shows. It was a big, happy family for the most part. So Animaniacs was created by Tom Ruegger, the creator of Tiny Toon Adventures, and of course Platypus Duck.
Yeah.
Which episode did we play the clip of Platypus Duck?
I think that was in the Pinky and the Brain episode.
I think you're right, yeah, because that was Platypus Duck's appearance on the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, correct?
Yes, yeah.
And his only revival to date.
Ruegger was one of the up-and-coming guys at H&B Studios, and he did Pup Named Scooby-Doo, actually a good, funny show.
It was sort of just like the ooze that crawled out of the muck that would become Tiny Toons and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, Tom Ruegger, he started at Filmation, Disgusting, working on things like Gilligan's Planet, and eventually moved up through the ranks at Hanna-Barbera. And as Henry said, he worked on he created a pup named Scooby-Doo, which was right before Tiny Toons, just like a savvy, self-aware cartoon that was, respectful of the audience's knowledge about cartoons. So it was just sort of creeping towards Tiny Toons. Not quite as smart or as well animated, but it was still a very interesting cartoon for 1988.
He's a man who loves cartoon ducks, that's for sure.
He wanted to turn everything into ducks. So at the immense success of Tiny Toons, Steven Spielberg, obviously the executive producer of all this stuff, he wanted Tom to create a brand new show. So at first, they kicked around the idea of a Plucky Duck spinoff. And I think that came into being as the Plucky Duck Show, which was a Saturday morning compilation of Plucky Duck shorts with one unique episode. That's the return of Bat Duck.
Yes, yeah, that was the one presented as the Plucky Duck Show, and that is a TMS classic of the series.
It is so gorgeous, and that show was a total bait and switch. I watched the first episode thinking, oh boy, a show just about Plucky Duck, my favorite character on this show, and then nothing but rehashes ever
just
since.
Just rerun packages, or just it's the one where he tries to be Mr. DeVille. But I watched that 2 years ago.
It's
a millennia ago in childhood years.
That's a fourth of my life, yeah. But for as much as the theme song for the Plucky Duck Show makes fun of itself, it doesn't make fun of that aspect of the show, that it's 90% used content.
Yeah. But I mean, Plucky was the breakout star of that series. He probably sold the most merch as well.
So Tom Ruegger's initial idea was related to two things very close to him. Number one, ducks. And number two, his three sons, Luke, Cody, and Nathan. The whitest names you could ever pick for three sons.
Yeah, Cody.
Cody, little Cody.
That's as white as it gets in 91.
Yeah, that's the Kathy Lee joke, talking about little Cody.
Oh, yes.
So all of these kids would eventually voice kid characters throughout the Silver Age of Warner Brothers cartoons. So I believe Nathan Ruegger was the voice of Baby Plucky in the Tiny Toon shorts and would eventually become the voice of Skippy Squirrel before being replaced by his younger brothers when his voice changed.
That's why Skippy sounds different.
Yes.
Okay.
Because of puberty. So if you go back and look at Animaniacs history stuff, you can see original production art with three duck characters in the concentric WB circles, the Looney Tune circles. The circles are green. So Tom Ruegger explains this. He says, the three ducks in quote-unquote the rings were based on characters from an animated cartoon I made in my film school days, the premiere of Platypus Duck. Spent 2 years animating, painting, and shooting this 11-minute epic, and then used this film as the showpiece in my in-job interview with Bill Hanna at Hanna-Barbera. I got the job as an assistant animator, and I was very happy. So it all goes back to the things he created, Platypus Duck and his sons, with his first wife.
Well, I mean, Hanna-Barbera owns every other idea you have while you're there, so I guess that's what he has to go back to. But wow, that's I didn't know it came straight from them. But if I'm Warner, I would say no to three young ducks just because like DuckTales is all that's DuckTales. Like it's so Disney's thing to do a duck show. I wouldn't want to do it, honestly.
It's interesting in that I couldn't really find a source as to how the ducks became sort of the ink blot characters. That's
kind of bug things, or monkeys,
nondescript like dog human things.
Yeah.
But there's no definitive source. Like one entry I read was someone drew like a red nose on the ducks, and it went from there. It just all sounds very fuzzy. But at some point, there were three ducks. There were perhaps a fourth, many accounts. So Yacky, Smacky, Wacky, and Dot. Those were the four ducks. And Dot was going to be the girl duck. And it was always going to be three brothers and a girl. So at a certain point, Smacky and Wacky became Wacko. And Yacky became Yakko. And Dot just continued existing. And then at another point, they became the doggish human creatures, which there are a lot of jokes in the series as to, like, what are these things? And they can't explain it.
They're not monkeys, they're just cuckoo. I know that about them.
And they're not blackface characters either.
No.
Like Bosco.
No, that I always thought there was a little bit of the Bosco episode or the Honey episodes of Tiny Toons in these guys. Or also, there's like, it feels like a wannabe pilot for Animaniacs on Tiny Toons where they meet the old black and white cartoon characters and hang out with them.
Yeah, I was going to reference that. So there's a later episode called Two-Tone Town, which is very much about that. It feels like a sequel to the Bosco and Honey cartoons in that they are very much cleaning up the dirty minstrel show past of Warner Brothers cartoons by saying like, oh, look at these nice old cartoons. Forget what they were actually like. And so
they have new voices now.
And yes, don't ask any questions, but I can definitely see the designs from that cartoon being made at the same time Animaniacs was being developed, really influencing the look of Animaniacs. Like if you go back to that episode of Tiny Toons, you can definitely see like basically the Warner Brothers and Dot in just slightly different forms.
Even I think one is voiced by Rob Paulson. I think.
Yeah, like the goofy character, like the goofy style. Like by goofy, I mean goofy dog.
Oh, yes.
Dippy dog.
Dippy dog.
So this caused some problems. So the duck characters were turned into the Animaniacs characters. But unfortunately, this really confounded the Warner Brothers CEO at the time, Bob Daly. So to celebrate the production of this new series to follow up Tiny Toons, they basically put a giant inflatable Yakko on the water tower. On the lot that we are going to be staying by soon, correct?
Yes,
we can go visit the Animaniacs.
We were just across. Well, right now that thing has an HBO Max logo on it, so it's. I want to see the Animaniacs tear that apart.
Are the Animaniacs okay in there? I really need to know.
They're suffocating.
So to celebrate, they put this inflatable Yakko on the water tower, and the CEO gets to the studio and he was like, "What is this? Why is Mickey Mouse, this weird version of Mickey Mouse, on my studio? Have it removed." Whoa. And so he had it removed, not knowing what it even was. And they had pictures of this. Like we got pictures to make sure people knew he took it down because we were really pissed off.
Wow, that's I mean, boy, I get that it's a giant operation and you don't know who does what, but that's man, to just tear it down instead of investigating why somebody put that up.
He thought it was some sort of Banksy style prank, I guess, putting Mickey Mouse on his lot. But yeah, he eventually found out what it was, and he basically, there was like a top-down directive saying, change these characters, and it was a lot of money to fix because they were in production. So what they did was they added like little side whiskers to Yakko and Wacko because they used to have rounded, cheeks.
That makes sense, honestly. I like their little sideburns or whatever because those points do separate them from Mickey and the jaw lines of that era of cartoons.
And they also changed Dot's bow into a flower. So
okay,
yes. So
yeah. No, I mean, smart. I think that was a good idea.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't think there was ever any worry about being sued, but I think they wanted people to know they're legally distinct from Disney characters.
No, that totally makes sense, and I'm slightly more on the executive side who thinks it was a Disney character. Sure.
I think you can even see episodes and even production art with the rounded cheeks and the Dot with the bow in her hair. Like I think you can go back and even see those. They got the news pretty late into like just starting things up. So
man, what
a bummer.
That sounds pretty rough for. Also, I would have figured they'd have a little more leeway after the success of Tiny Toons. You think they'd have a little more, trust from the Warner Company.
So here's a quote from Tom Ruger about that. He says, Warner Brothers CEO Bob Daly personally drew in some of the side whiskers on Yakko and Wacko after he thought he saw a giant Mickey Mouse balloon climbing on the Warner Brothers water tower. In fact, it was a Yakko balloon that we had arranged to place on the tower, but since Bob could not tell the difference between the two characters at the time, he insisted that Whiskers be added to the Warner Brothers. And that is a story from Tom Ruegger himself.
I like to imagine him in the studio, like with a pen, like, there, that's the Whiskers. That's I mean, as far as a test audience goes, if your CEO can't tell the difference between it and a Disney character,
dumbest possible audience member.
Yeah, then you're in trouble, I suppose. His opinion does matter more than a million test audiences.
But ultimately, outside of just concerning the three central characters, the entire premise of this is basically the observations of a father about three rambunctious children that are also the Marx Brothers. That's basically what it is.
I mean, they had so much love for the Marx Brothers in Tiny Toons. They did an episode that was just them, Buster, Babs, and Plucky as the Marx Brothers,
and just straight up just doing bits,
just doing
their
bits. Yeah, so that I understand the continuation. I mean, Yakko is so it's Harpo, Groucho, and I would guess Dot is Chico,
maybe. Or like the wealthy dowager they annoy.
Oh, she's in on the jokes.
I know.
Dowagers, no. Scratch and Sniff's the dowager.
That really is true. And I will say up front that this is my comedy sin. I have to admit this to everyone. Please don't unsubscribe. I don't like the Marx Brothers.
Oh.
I gave them a shot. I don't like them.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And I like silent comedy. I like some Three Stooges stuff, which is way inferior to Marx Brothers in terms of the arts. But I just can't get into it.
Sorry, I love the Marx Brothers. I think they're very, very
I think
funny.
you sincerely love it, but I also think it's something people say they love to seem intelligent.
Look, yes, it's the smarter, cool
keep
thing
your
to
Adam
say.
Sandler. I'll be watching A Night at the Opera.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. But look.
I mean, I would rather watch any Marx Brothers than, let's say, Jack and Jill, or even Big Daddy.
I think Duck Soup is the best of them. I think in some of them, they're clearly like in their 50s and getting very tired.
Yeah.
Or some are like Coconuts where they just take like 10-minute breaks to hear just a woman sing a nice song. And it's like, well, it's a review movie. Who cares about these bits?
Or like there's a couple in love in the movie also.
Yeah, they got to have one of the Marx Brothers, the boring Marx brother, Zeppo. You got to have him do something.
Who's the joke is he's Italian? Which one is that?
That's Chico.
Oh, it's Chico. It's Chico, not Chico.
Oh, my bad.
Yes.
Chico. Well, geez, maybe I'm not a fan. Hey, you can't fool me. There is no sanity clause.
Break your face.
Hey.
I don't. That like when I was watching those movies, I'm like, who is this character? Like, what's his deal?
I mean, it's an Italian immigrants. They're funny. They don't speak the language.
It's true. He uses his Italian accent no more. But
it's also kind of cruel that it's like these are children of Jewish immigrants making fun of an Italian immigrant.
Hey, you got to punch down. But I will say, I like everything that came from Marx Brothers, like this. Like Yakko is Groucho Marx. Period. And Wacko is Harpo?
Oh, he's so hard. I mean, they give him a horn. He makes a Gookie, like the song Make a Gookie. That is the name that Harpo made up for the face he makes. I guess Dot is kind of she's like if Chico was one of the women they drove crazy.
If they had like a horny woman as part of the cast.
Yeah. Which women were called hysterical if they were like that back in the 30s. They were put in an insane asylum.
So I want to describe Animaniacs in case you've never seen it. So like Tiny Toon Adventures, it's a throwback to the golden age of Warner Brothers cartoons. But unlike Tiny Toon Adventures, there's no cohesive world that all the characters live in, although they often cross over into each other's worlds. It's more of a variety show that's anchored by the Warner Brothers characters and their sister. And they often introduce cartoons when they aren't starring in them. So I think there was some lack of confidence in the beginning where it's like, well, if there's a bit about a new character or a non-Warner's character, the Warners will sing a little song about like, here's what you're about to see.
and even just run through sometimes. Just remind you, like, you're still watching Animaniacs, kids. Here's the Warners. It's okay. I mean, as a pilot program for other shows that could take off, it's a smart move there to go like, well, what if, this is anchored by the Warner Brothers and their sister Dot, who everybody loves, but they could also have, Chicken Boo or other characters that just could be popular enough to get their own series. And the variety aspect to it was a big one that drew me in because I of course loved Tiny Toons when it was new, but when Animaniacs came out, I liked it more than Tiny Toons because with Tiny Toons, you just see all these characters and you pretty much knew, oh, this is the Taz, this is the Tweety, but in Animaniacs, like, they were whole new concepts you had to learn. Like, they didn't have a analog in classic Looney Tunes, and it made it feel more fresh and exciting.
And like more confident too. Just like you don't need your bug surrogate, you can have Yakko.
Yeah, I mean, this we go super into this in the How I Spent My Vacation, but Tiny Toons was originally just pitched as like, could you just make a Muppet Babies for Looney Tunes? And they got as creative and funny with that concept as they could, but the roots were, can you just make these baby versions of Bugs and Daffy and everybody?
Yeah, just make something cheap and profitable for us. And they made something good out of that. So the entire premise of Animaniacs, why I really love it, even as a kid, was that it was a commentary on cartoon history. So the kind of overarching premise is, what if the oldest cartoon characters were just as wild and crazy as the ones we actually like? So, like, as far as I'm concerned, like, nothing Warner Brothers is watchable until you get to Porky Pig. And even then, you got to wait a little bit till you get to Porky and Daffy, and then Bugs, and of course, everything good that came after that. Like, Animaniacs, in their last episode of the first season, like episode 65, out of that first package. We watched it not too long ago. It's like the Warner Brothers 65th anniversary special.
And it's the 65th episode.
It is, the last one in the first order. And they reference Buddy, who was a very early Warner Brothers character. No, not Bosco, Buddy.
And I had no clue Buddy existed.
I didn't until I did research for that Retronauts. But no, Buddy existed. He's in a bunch of very boring cartoons. And the joke was he was upstaged by the Warner Brothers. And they make jokes about how bad his cartoons were. It's sort of like the Simpsons gag about That Happy Cat, where it's just like Scratchy walking down the street and that's the end of the cartoon.
I mean, that was the type of cartoons Buddy made, but that was back then, Silly Symphonies was the biggest thing, and so everybody else just wanted to copy those, and that just meant, or Betty Boop cartoons of just a silly animal moving its knees, pretty much.
I mean, story came in later. Animation has always been a magic trick, but back then it was only a magic trick. Like, you're going to come into a dark room and see this dog man dance around and play like a goat, like a banjo, and that's it. Like, that was the extent of what you were there for.
And in the start, that was something that also, immediately grabbed me on the show, was the pitch that we see in the start of this episode, that these were cartoons that were definitely made in 1930 or 1928 even, but they were too crazy and they were locked away. So this is Warner's history coming back to bite it in the butt, and as somebody who loved, like Roger Rabbit installed in all of our generation, an interest in animation history. And so, today, I like that. I don't think even then I believed it. On some level, I think I knew it was made up for the show. But I like the idea that, this is the lost history returned. These cartoons existed.
Yeah, I like the lore, and especially after Roger Rabbit, I like the idea of, I always like the idea of toons as actors. Like, toons are just these non-human creatures that act in cartoons, and this is a reflection of that.
Yeah, and just conceptually, finally giving, as a kid, the name Warner Brothers, the name of that studio as the people who have a logo before, the Bugs Bunny cartoon you watched. But now the Animaniacs gifted the company with actual things, call the names of their characters, that was, or the name of the studio. They had Warner Brothers. What are the Warner Brothers? Well, it's Yakko and Wacko Warner and their sister Dot, which I never got that pun.
Oh, the dots?
The dot is the dot at the end of Bros, like that. I think it was definitely on Twitter I learned that was the pun.
Yeah, I learned that trivia way, way, way too late. But yeah, so it's a commentary on cartoon history. It's also making fun of just, how boring cartoons were back then. They were just these very one-note things.
They all suck. I mean, maybe this show wouldn't have existed if Nickelodeon hadn't rerun a billion Bosco cartoons in 1989 and everybody realized how shitty they were.
We were only 4 years away from Nickelodeon saying, no more Bosco, we apologize. Bosco is being executed.
That was a fulfilling day in my childhood of I'm glad they recognize I don't want to see Bosco.
The promo was now without Bosco. And the guy even goes, sorry, Bosco.
Sorry,
it's yes, we know, we got your letters. We're putting Bosco in the ground.
It's the lowest rated time of any part of our day.
But then they put on on those damn awful late 60s shorts where it's like, get rid of those too. Bunny and Claude.
Yeah.
And Cool Cat.
Cool Cat.
And Anthony Aardvark.
Anthony Aardvark, yeah. Cool Cat, or also like the cheapest of the cheap Speedy Gonzales or Daffy Duck cartoons. Yeah, just these ugly ones. But I mean, if you put a gun to my head and said choose between Cool Cat or Bosco, I'll watch Cool Cat because at least it's like in color and not as racist. I'm sure
although the official WB short of that era is called Injun Trouble.
Ooh, all right.
Injun meaning Indian, meaning Native American.
If this was the late 60s,
68,
that's a little late to be doing Injun jokes, I gotta say.
It's the only reason I know that because it's the official last cartoon of that era.
That's sad.
It's very sad. So I think I said this on the last podcast we did 2 years ago about this topic, but this definitely feels like a version of The Critic for kids, even though I was a kid watching The Critic. So yeah, both shows were developed around the same time, but it's all full of, pop culture parodies and references, mostly for children of the 60s. Like, they didn't care if we understood anything that was happening, but it was through like the lens of Animaniacs and Mystery Science Theater and The Critic that I learned about older pop culture. It was just like I learned about the parodies first, and then I found the actual item.
Yeah, this gave me boomer brain for all the things that the boomer writers for this were into, just like MST3K, but like the Animaniacs writing staff had such specific tastes of things from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, like, and they got to indulge even more than they did on Tiny Toons. Like, Tiny Toons definitely indulged.
Oh, for sure.
Like a Sonny and Cher joke on that show, or they had a million. They had a Mickey Mouse Club joke, which like children didn't know what real Mickey Mouse Club was. So yeah, I think they went even crazier on Animaniacs with their references to things no child born in 1982 would know.
And I think they knew that adults would be watching because they learned from the very early internet that people were watching Tiny Toons who weren't children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you always hear people compare it to like Rocky and Bullwinkle. That was always written for parents, and then maybe they also were by 1991 recognizing, or 92, they recognizing that the reverse was happening, that Simpsons was for adults, but it had a huge kid audience.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So what really makes this series what it is, different than the other ones, is that it is full of songs. Mm-hmm. I forgot how many songs were just in this episode. Like, the Cookies for Einstein has 2 songs in it that I totally forgot about. There's just like so many tiny songs, of course, some of the showpiece songs like Yakko's we'll talk about in this episode. But this series is famous for its songs to the point where Slappy Squirrel complains about it in her intro.
I do like that. Yeah. This Animaniacs let the staff see what they did so well on Tiny Toons and what they didn't like about Tiny Toons, and really do more and more of what they liked from that. Like, they loved Tiny Toons had so many great musical episodes, like either original songs or just especially TMS animated ones that were set to a song, like all the music video episodes,
yep.
Or the Anvil anthem where Plucky was being chased by anvils.
That one's amazing.
Yeah, so I could see that they were like, well, let's just be more sing-songy. We like writing songs. We like this, like, 10-penny opera, all these things. It's fun. It's fun for them. And I mean, that's not even like boomer stuff. Like, that's somebody even older is just like, I like Broadway musicals from 1920.
Jeez.
Those are my favorites.
Gershwin was my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so, I feel like they had a lot of confidence in this show because I'm thinking about like going into this show in 1993. Was there a concern, do you think, from them? Like, people are going to think all this singing is just so corny or perhaps a little too gay?
Oh, I mean...
It's like, maybe my mom thought I was gay growing up because I was watching a lot of Animaniacs, which is just like full of show tunes.
Yeah.
Show-stopping show tunes.
It's very fruity, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I could see somebody having a concern with that, but I think they were just so confident after the success of Tiny Toons, like clearly having all original characters be every character in the show and having almost no deep characters. I understand. I get a certain sense of confidence, and that would also go to like, we'll just have a million original songs. Like, and I think too, they could see from Tiny Toons that they really did get to have a full orchestra, and they understood what that could provide them. Plus, if they're looking across the street at what Disney is doing, Disney reignited the animated musical with Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin. Like, kids are loving these Broadway musicals that are being animated.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because I did think about that. We are living in the era in which these, off-Broadway musicians are writing these hit songs for Disney movies. So everybody is into these musical songs at this point in time.
Yeah, so I think, I bet there probably were a few parents out there that were maybe thought this is making my kids gay with all these show tunes.
Are you watching that Bernadette Peters character again?
Oh, okay, well, I could go on and on about Bernadette Peters in this.
Yeah, imagine being a parent in 1993 and walking on your son seeing a full Les Miserables parody and being like, I don't know about this.
That was the greatest day of my life. Let me tell you, Les Miserables, I believe it was called. I love that one so much because I've been listening to my mom owned the Les Mis soundtrack. She played it all the time, so I heard it all the time and fell in love with it. I didn't know who Bernadette Peters was. I now know very well how amazing she is. But she was a Tony Award-winning legend in 1993 already. Mm-hmm. For her to do a Les Mis parody, which she wasn't in Les Mis, but she did the parody, I loved every second of it. I knew which every song was the equivalent to, and I knew all the plot. And when my mom came home from work that day, I was bouncing off the walls to her like, it was a whole Les Mis parody. And they did this song, they did this song, they did this song, and this song.
My son's gone crazy.
I mean, again, you talk about when they should know you're gay. That feels like that kind of moment.
No one should be ashamed for listening or liking these songs. I just had no context for any of that stuff. So I had no idea, why is this part of Animaniacs always so maudlin and sort of a little tedious for me?
Oh yes, sure. Those look, you're going to try a million different things. There's some tedious things, but that could be a magical moment. Most episodes of Animaniacs where if you feel in the dark on one of the stories they're doing, that then if you saw something that was a reference you got, it felt extra special. Like, oh, I actually have seen this TV show they're parodying or whatever. Yeah.
So it didn't really have the same impact as Tiny Toon Adventures because that is what really changed a lot of things. And, of course, it was landing right after the Nicktoons movement. So Animaniacs is landing in, peak Ren and Stimpy or just, right after John K's episodes are over for that. So it dodged a bullet there.
Yeah. No, it's, it's the hottest time in animation in 1993, too, because you've got Fox Kids has... it's getting all the ratings. It has, as the fourth network has really kicked the butt of all the other channels. And it was thanks to having the hottest cartoons. They identified that Tiny Toons was the hottest and that they wanted the next thing. And they built around Animaniacs perfectly too. That and Batman, they got the second generation of Warner created animation with Batman and Animaniacs and rode that wave of success.
They should have never left Fox though. They were too confident there.
We know why.
Yes. Wait, why? I'm confused.
The change in laws in station ownership that Warner could own its own channel.
Oh, so I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's
okay, thank you for telling me that.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that. It did get viewed as being, much savvier and more adult than Tiny Toons. It also had a less kiddie name than Tiny Toon Adventures.
Yeah.
And then, some of the even more adult parts of Animaniacs would be spun off into their own series, like Pinky and the Brain, which got almost as many episodes as Animaniacs, which is crazy.
It got to air in real prime time, too. And also another thing they ditched from Tiny Toons was the pastel neon colors. This was so much more toned down palette-wise.
I love, in a way, how much those colors are screaming at your eyes, but they are such a product of 1988 or some part of the 80s.
Yeah, which, that looks very marketable to kids on just about any product. More so than a black and white character with, tan pants.
Yeah, brown pants or a powder blue shirt.
Yeah, just I want Mindy and buttons on my T-shirt. This is a less marketable show. I will say, though not that they didn't sell a shitload of merchandise, I'm sure. I remember I really treasured my collection. I got a set of stickers, of Animaniacs stickers, just to the Warner Brothers and their sister Dot, and I put it on folders and all my school books, the covers I had. And at the end of the school year, I was so sad I had to tear it apart and throw it away.
Just cut their heads off. So I actually have little bios on all the writers and directors on these segments, but I think I'll do those once I get to those segments when we get to the discussion section. So I'll save those until we get to each different little cartoon within this episode. But I did want to focus on the musical director and the composer for this whole series, Richard Stone, who unfortunately died in 2001. So he's been dead for about 20 years. At the age of 47, pancreatic cancer sucks.
That's sad. Boy, what a bummer. Jeez.
So he wrote amazing themes for shows like Tasmania, Animaniacs, and Freakazoid. He wrote those super catchy themes that mostly just name 1,000 characters.
Yes, yeah, which is that's proper branding. Like that's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to the extreme of we're going to say every character. I think the Animaniacs theme is the best one he wrote out of a ton of perfect songs.
It's in my head all over again, and it's so great. But yes, so he worked on a little bit of Tiny Toons and also the Tiny Toon OVA, How I Spent My Vacation. But after sort of Tasmania onwards, he was just full-time Warner Brothers music guy, shaping the direction of their music, pushing it as far as it would go. He used the same recording studio and piano as Carl Stalling, the classic Warner Brothers music composer. He thought, I'm channeling Carl Stalling. I want these cartoons to sound like his. And he did such an amazing job. No other shows sound like this, and no other shows will sound like this. It's just wall-to-wall, a scored cartoon, sort of dipping into public domain songs and popular songs and, cultural songs. It's all so well done that you don't even notice how much music there is.
Yeah, and it never rarely feels tacked on. A couple of times, I maybe did think they're breaking into song again or this, but every song, especially I think because it was just performed well by the cast, it never felt unnecessary. I loved every song.
And that's what makes me worry about the new series because no show would spend this money on music.
Yeah.
Live action, animated, you name it.
Never.
They got the Spielberg approval, and of course they had syndicated Fox ratings at the time.
But nobody's as powerful as Spielberg now, including Spielberg. So no one can get a company to open up the coffers for that kind of thing. I don't think he could squeeze that much money out of them. I was just thinking that watching these Disney originals on there, that show The Mandalorian, very expensive, looks pretty good, but there's no one on, it's not in the actors. There's two people who speak in one episode and they're not on screen at all in the second episode.
Wow.
It's and also it's all rendered in Unreal, or some of the backgrounds are it's seriously the Unreal logo is in the credits.
I've been told the Baby Groot character in that shows a spoiler.
It's supposed to be a surprise at the end of the first episode.
Okay,
but
I said Baby Groot. I didn't say the character's name.
This Baby Groot equivalent will be on every T-shirt in Disneyland probably within a month. So it can't be held back in Spoiler Town for too long because Disney's going to want to market the crap out of it for sure.
I did want to check. This may sound dark, but if somebody died in 2001 at a too young age, I'm did they make it to 9/11? No, he didn't, and that's good. If you're going to die in 2001, you want to die knowing the world is going to work out the way it should.
No, yeah.
I think even that was the case with Jack Lemmon too. He made it out. He made it out in time.
Yeah.
Those were the lucky ones.
I think my grandfather missed 9/11 as well. He he died 2001, but before it.
Of course, Richard Stone was alive and making amazing music.
Oh yes, yeah.
But God, what a legacy he left behind. Again, just watch an episode thinking about how every movement is scored, and just outside of the songs themselves, just the wall-to-wall music that's just underplaying everything.
It is the soul of the show. It's one of those as Red Letter Media would say, even if it's not there, your brain notices it.
Yeah. Even when you've got a lesser studio in an episode like ACOM or whatever, that 35-piece orchestra is still playing their hearts out.
Yeah, it uplifts even the crummiest of studios producing the stuff. And when an animator, when it's great animation, it accentuates it even more.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about just the ensemble nature of the show, where up front, the intro to the show is here are all of our characters, and upon making that intro, they weren't really sure who would work and who wouldn't work. But I want to kind of weigh in with our thoughts about the different characters in the show. So,
all right.
Up front, I think even the show recognizes who are the bad characters. And perhaps the worst characters are the Hip Hippos, which are a parody of Eurotrash yuppies. And that's like the extent of the joke. And also, they're just very fat, and that's the joke.
Yeah, there's just not a lot of places to go with them. They don't appear in many others. They're barely mentioned in it. That's what confused me in the first episode, they have that Monkeys Won't Do song, and the hippos are big parts of it, bigger than much more popular characters. And it made me think on the first episode, like, oh, I'm going to see these hippos a lot, or I can't wait to see the hippo ones. And they totally shoved them way late in the production or in the broadcasting of the first set of them. Like, I know they had more than one, but the only one I remember is like the opera one they did, that like the tragic opera one where they like split up or moved out.
Yeah.
Or something. Yeah,
it went on for way too long. So
endless. We talked about like which is the worst. I think hippos might be my least favorite.
So we also have how do we feel about the Goodfeathers? I haven't actually seen a segment of the Goodfeathers since I've seen Goodfellas for the first time, so I don't know. So number one, I do like how inappropriate it is to have a parody of Goodfellas. Goodfellas was only a 3-year-old movie in 1993.
And it wasn't like super mimetic either at the very start.
No, I mean the so they're all just doing Goodfellas bits. Squit is the Ray Liotta character, and Bobby, of course, is Bobby De Niro, and Pesto is the Joe Pesci character, and they all do their little bits. Of course, do I look like a clown to you, et cetera, et cetera. When Joe Pesci kills Spider, that's the joke they're referencing, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's a Shinebox one, but it's also like it's the thing early in the movie where Pesci and Liotta are talking about like, well, what do you mean clown? And then he makes it look like he's about to punch me. He's like, I'm kidding. And then of course Ray Liotta or Henry Hill goes, yeah. It's classic.
And he later go on to star in B Movie.
Oh God,
Ray Liotta.
That was the height of Ray Liotta for sure.
He peaked early, but yeah, I do like how inappropriate it is, and I do like things like their West Side Story parody was very cute.
I like that they could shove any type of New Yorkie thing onto them. Like I know they did a Rocky one with Bobby as well, or a Raging Bull. They did a Raging Bull one with Bobby.
Like, yeah, what's their vehicle for Scorsese parodies?
Yeah, which again, I didn't. I had no clue what a statue of Scorsese even meant, or perching on his head.
And I don't know. I really don't know if they were confident in these characters because we'll get to the different seasons of the show. But season 2 was a 4-episode order. Season 1 was 65. Season 2 was 4 because Fox was mad they were moving the show to their own network. And 3 out of 4 of those episodes have Goodfeathers episodes in them.
Yeah, it sounds like they just shoved the Goodfeathers to there. I mean, the Goodfeathers, my personal opinion on them was that they weren't my least favorite as a kid because they at least had like kind of senseless violence in them. It was some of the most violent, but I didn't know what it was from. Now looking at it, it's kind of one note. I feel like after you get 3 of them, there's a reason they do a different movie each time.
Yeah.
They just don't do Goodfellas. Or there's also The Godfather too, that look like Marlon Brando in it too.
Oh, the God Pigeon.
Yeah, the God Pigeon.
They also had a character named Steven Seagal, which I like.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
But they were okay. They're not at the bottom of the list for me, for sure.
So you could talk about Rita and Runt because they were just a vehicle for Broadway music parodies or Broadway musical parodies.
But also Rain Man parodies. Don't forget.
Oh, right,
that
that leavened the maudlin Broadway aspect where you have the dog that is Raymond from Rayman doing just like the impression of what they thought an autistic person acted like.
Yeah, it doesn't age too well there. I'll say that. That's for sure. But,
no, I really think that for a long time the Dustin Hoffman portrayal of that character was just shorthand to make fun of, those kind of people.
Yeah.
Just like for a long time, the Lon Chaney portrayal of Lenny. Which way did he go?
Yep.
Like that was that era's version of that.
Yeah, it's how to mock a handicap.
It's making basically R-word jokes essentially.
Yeah,
but I don't think there was meanness in their heart. It was just a popular impression at the time. But it's kind of weird now that we can reflect on Rayman and be like, that was kind of weird.
Yeah, the Read and Runt things really let them go wild with the musical stuff, and they got to, there's some voice actors in this that are very good singers, but Bernadette Peters is one of the best singers of her lifetime. Like she is a legend on Broadway. She makes everything great, and they basically just hire her to like imitate Sondheim songs. She's so good at singing, and they at great expense like flew her from New York to L.A. and her dog to do recordings for it. Now, I mean, them themselves, if you like musicals, they're a lot of fun. They definitely are too maudlin. Like there's sentimentality in it that most of the other Animaniacs episodes like would piss all over. They'd be like, "How dare you have this sentiment?" Like if we talk about what sucks in Yakko's Wish, it's that it verges too much into sentimentality, and that's really there in the Rita and Runt things. But that's because like Bernadette Peters, I would say, is a very funny person, but you do play her kind of emotionality as this like cynic who wants to be loved. That's the character of Rita. She's like, I don't trust anybody, but will this finally be my home? That's kind of her character.
There's a smarter version of Furball from Tiny Toons.
Yeah, actually, it's pretty much just them doing Furball with a great singer.
Maybe I'm now old enough to appreciate Rita and Runts.
I think you'll appreciate the skill involved in it, but definitely the Les Mis one is their best. Their best is when they have a specific musical that they're going to just parody in full. When they don't do that and it's just about like animals trying to get adopted, that's boring, and they're a lot less fun. Especially if you just saw Ren and Stimpy cover these kind of plots in better. I mean, they're kind of Ren and Stimpy style combo as well of lost animals. But
that is true.
But yeah, the songs by Bernadette Peters are great. I think after about 4 Rita and Run shorts, you maybe don't need to ever make more of them.
I don't think they made too many. So let's talk about also Slappy Squirrel. I love the concept behind Slappy, that she's a retired, cranky cartoon character, because apparently cartoon characters can age and retire. She is like was acting in, I guess, the 40s or the 50s. You see some like bits of her old material, but she's like it's also an excuse to make like fun old people jokes. Too, which the 90s had a lot of crazy old people characters, but essentially like she and all of her peers are now old and retired.
It's almost like they took the Golden Girls jokes they enjoyed doing and gave it to... I mean, she's a lot like Estelle, I think, from Golden Girls.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Slappy is one of my all-time favorites. Like, I think she is my second favorite, just behind third, it goes Warner's, P&B, and then Slappy. Slappy, like, I love that she is a hyper self-aware character who knows every trick from all these old cartoons, but also is just this crotchety old lady is like, what's on the TV? I gotta watch this.
Played by a young, beautiful woman, Sherry Stoner. Of course, the model for Ariel and Belle and Groundling. So
from the LA Groundlings with Kathy Griffin and Julia Sweeney were two of her compadres. Yeah, Sherry Stoner, like her first writing was on Tiny Toons, so then she transitioned over to Animaniacs, and I feel like I think we'll talk about it more with another writer later in this, but I think the writer's room really was just like, if you could do a funny impression, they just said, you just do that voice.
Especially with this episode.
And that's Sherry in this too. Like Sherry, I bet, was just doing Slappy around the office and just was like, if we did these shorts of what if Betty Boop got old, what would that sound like? Well, she'd sound like this. That's comedy. Hey, these walnuts.
You remind me.
It's. I just rewatched a couple of hers that I love so much, especially the. I think it's her first one where they're getting walnuts and she's just from an angry dog, and she's just like, I've done this before. It's old. Like she can see that Skippy is doing a wild take, and she's like, based upon that wild take, I would say he's bonk right behind me, wasn't he?
I like that she is the weary cartoon star who knows the setups for all these gags and can just predict them. Or like she walk Skippy through like, here's how you do the those endearing young charms gag, where it's like you play the piano and when you hit the right key, it explodes. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Dun dun bum 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 bum. Yeah, and she also is so proud of her own work that she's just like, she becomes one of those people interviewed for documentaries in the 90s who were stars in the 20s who just go, actually, it was Walt Flanagan who directed me. And in that one sketch, it was like, Actually, it was Cave Girl Slappy, 1932, directed by Piz Peeners, but let's not be anal.
I like that.
She got to get away with saying let's
Anal.
not be anal on TV.
Yeah, like that. So Slappy's great. We can't go through every possible character because some lasted for like one little bit, but Buttons and Mindy were other standouts.
Ooh.
I feel like I like all the physical humor in these, but ultimately they're too cruel. And after being punished and like mangled for an entire segment, Buttons is then punished again.
Yeah, it just hurts. I don't like those ones. I think my favorite gag in a Buttons and Mindy was when they were just doing a walking through a construction site episode, and then characters from like Popeye and a Popeye parody would run by doing the exact same thing, and then a Mickey Mouse parody would run right by. And it's just them recognizing, like, yes, this is very tired to do the walking through a construction site gag. No, they bugged. I mean, I felt so bad for poor Buttons. It just and Mindy is like a more innocent but still annoying Elmira to me. Just just too cute. Didn't like
There's
her.
a lot of like observational kid stuff on this from a lot of, I'm guessing, younger parents.
Yeah,
on
oh, yeah.
Animaniacs. Like,
You
my
know.
daughter does this, or my sons do this. Like, a lot of that is happening in the show.
They finally had after they hit it rich in Tiny Toons. They're like, all right, time to have kids, and then they start pitching the baby stuff in '93.
And there's like a segment where like a little boy runs out and tells you about like Randy Beeman, and then
Yep.
runs back inside. It's
Yeah.
weird. It's weird.
Good idea, bad idea is way funnier than that Randy Beeman.
It is
kid.
funny. And of course, there's Pinky and the Brain, which we have an entire episode about Pinky and the Brain, and also we'll be talking about Pinky and the Brain in this episode. So not much to say, but they were the breakout characters immediately. In this episode, all of their shit is figured out at the beginning. Like, there's nothing more to figure out about those characters.
Yeah, the second you see them, you're like, these are already the best of this show. Like, they're funnier than the Warner Brothers and Dot even. Like, often I think they get to a bunch of songs with Yakko, Wacko, and Dot because, they do have real characters, but it's eventually gets harder for them to really do something with them because they're just wacky people who happen to situations. Pinky and the Brain is an constantly repeatable and changeable storyline.
Yeah, it's a very good formula that 65 episodes could fit into, apparently, and lots of segments. Let's talk about the voice cast. So, too many people to even go into detail about, but basically the voice acting mafia of the 90s was here and on full display. So, of course, we have Rob Paulsen as a lot of characters. He's playing Yakko, Dr. Scratch and Sniff, Pinky. I'm sure there are others I'm forgetting about, but Rob Paulsen, this is his show, basically.
Totally. I think they used him not to a small amount of Tiny Toons, but he was not a regular on Tiny Toons.
He was, I think, just foul mouth.
Yeah, and I think they loved Foul Mouth so much. Like, this is the lead of our show. Like, this guy is great at everything, and he really is like, I mean, he can still do bits from this show just off the top of his head at a moment's notice. Like, he is one of the best voice actors of his generation. So much better than just, look, I love it's Raphael, but that's just a toy commercial. Like, he's not getting to do fun songs or crazy, like, really challenge himself and show off his skill.
And it's not really much of a voice. I mean, he does a good job, but it's not like a voice like Yakko is, or Dr. Scratch and Sniff, or Pinky. So then we have Tress MacNeille, who we just were in the same room with as Dot. It is a different voice than Babs, and she is like the utility female player on the cast as well.
Yeah, I mean, she does have to do a lot of like more cutesier things than Babs does. I think Babs is a more self-possessed character, but I do like that Dot gets to be horny. Like, it's weird to say about all these child-sized characters.
All these children are very horny in the show.
Well,
it's one of their bits.
But they are like in their 90s now, so it's okay. But that lets them get away with Hello Nurse stuff because Dot also gets to be into Mel Gibson.
Well, hey, who wasn't in 1993?
Yeah. So, and Tress plays her very, very well. I think it almost is a step down from Babs, just because Babs was the co-star of the show, but she does a great job here, too.
And we also have a relative newcomer to voice acting, Jess Harnell. So he plays Wakko and various incidental voices. And basically, they couldn't figure out Wakko, what his voice would be. They auditioned a ton of people. When he was in the room, they were like, we have no idea what to do. So they were just throwing out like celebrities for him to impersonate. Like, we got to land on like some sort of hook for this character's voice. And they're like, can you do the Beatles? And he was like, I can do all of the Beatles. So he did all of the Beatles for them. And they're like, well, that's our guy. And the Ringo voice is Yakko. And it's so funny, like, so much of Animaniacs is tied to like 60s pop culture from the childhoods of the writers. And like a Beatles voice is one of the main characters.
One of the lead characters. He plays the drums. He does it all. Yeah. No, I have to potty. Like hearing the specific Liverpudlian accent of Ringo Starr, like saying, I have to potty. I have to put it. Ooh, keister. I learned a new word.
Yeah, it is fun to conflict with the sort of higher pitched voices of Yakko and Dot, too. It's just like, where did this character come from?
Yeah, I mean, Yakko was my favorite because he was the older brother who also could never stop talking.
And you wore your pants very high.
Now I do. I'm actually wearing a Yakko-style pants right now.
And, of course, Maurice LaMarche.
Yes.
So I guess previously he just played Dizzy Devil, but he's all over this cartoon too.
What
with
a
the
waste
brain.
of him on Dizzy Devil.
Yeah,
man.
but pitching his voice up too.
Yeah.
For Dizzy Devil.
Most characters sounded on Tiny Toons like they were pitched up. I think that too, they could let people sound old. I mean, yeah, we talk about indulgences. Maurice LaMarche, they really indulge with him. And I love every second of it. I mean, we talked way more about this on our Pinky and the Brain podcast, but
on the Critic too.
Yeah.
On Talking Critic.
He's Maurice, still with us, one of the best of his generation too. Like, can do just about everything, and like his chemistry with Rob Paulson, especially, just like is a main event on this show. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we have people like, of course, Frank Welker. I think we talked enough about him. He is just like Mr. Cartoon Voice.
Yes.
And then, writers for the show like Sherry Stoner playing Slappy. Paul Rugg plays Einstein in this episode. Not Paul Rudd. It's Paul Rugg with 2 Gs. He plays Einstein in Cookies for Einstein. Lots of incidental voices. Also, Mr. Director, who is a joke for no child watching. Nope. Only later in life that I was like, oh, this character is just making fun of Jerry Lewis's late in life self-importance.
I had no idea. And that they get away with like a clown, like him playing a clown. Yeah. It's the gas chamber movie.
I know I said this before on podcast, but the ultimate like high of Animaniacs was doing an Apocalypse Now parody, number 1, on a kid's show, but also number 2, making it about the making of The Day the Clown Cried.
Yes, yeah.
With a Jerry Lewis style director. Like, that is insane.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was watching, but I loved it. And then later in life, I was like, oh my God, that's so wrong.
And the clown character, when he is singing like a song that Jerry Lewis thinks is what kids will like, when the whippoorwill,
oh yeah,
willows in the west, the wind can't whip her back. Oh, nice and chubby baby.
I still think of Freundleben.
Like in the Apocalypse Now one, that the hearing the imitation of Dennis Hopper saying Freundleben.
I got to go back and watch that one again. Now that I've seen Apocalypse Now and heard a lot about The Day the Clown Cried. So,
like, they have a joke in that one that I didn't get for years until I watched the making of documentaries on Apocalypse Now, where Marlon Brando is, riffing and just saying shit. And he's like, a bug flew in my mouth. And in that one, the Mr. Director goes like, and he's talking in a serious voice, like, a bug flew in my mouth. It hurt. Oh, wow. It's in my, like.
Now that I know more about Cranky Jerry Lewis, I really want to go back to see Mr. Director.
And Paul Rugg just does it perfectly. I love.
He does both sides, like wacky 60s Jerry Lewis and like I'm a very important director kind of guy.
Serious way to talk voice. Yes.
Who else do we have here? There are lots of voice actors from this era, but that's just who I landed on. Of course, we didn't talk about Minerva Vink. Too hot for TV.
Yes, yeah.
She's played by my would-be girlfriend, Julie Brown. Unfortunately, she's 60 and I'm taken, but I did have a big crush on her growing up. And this character was too hot for TV. In fact, they had to go back in and delete cleavage from her. And I think she had 2 shorts.
Yes, yeah.
But she basically, her cartoons are all about her driving a dog horny, like painfully horny.
A wiener dog. Just to make it extra. I just rewatched that one, and Star Toons really was having a good time with that one. I mean,
how many furries figured out who they were? based on Minerva Mink.
I mean, they have like John McClanahan, especially. He's so good at drawing sexy babes in animation style, and I think he took a certain amount of pride in it. But also, like, the episode was written by Sherry Stoner. I think it was made. It was made to be a sexy cartoon that definitely pushed the boundaries, but I didn't see it as a sexist cartoon.
No, it was like a woman being empowered, if you will, by her sexiness.
Well, I mean,
in a non-like jokey way, you know.
And if you compare Minerva Mink to Julie Bruin, Bruin is I almost said bonkers, but she's crazy.
We moved past bonkers.
In design.
Jesus! Go type Julie Bruin into Google. That is some furry wank bait. I swear to God. Like, going back, like, how was I allowed to watch this? Those are some well-animated breasts on a cartoon bear.
So Minerva Mink is even, like, toned down from that.
Yeah.
But, like, there's in the original Minerva Mink, there's even a joke of, like, her bouncing up and down on the ground with her butt in it, making, like, heart symbols as she bounces in a circle.
Oh, my Lord.
I mean, after she got 2 shorts, that's all she got. She didn't get to appear in the intro. They went too far in Fox's estimation, I think. But it was also just their take on, I think they did see it a little bit as like a more self-possessed woman doing Tex Avery boner jokes.
Yeah, and I think it was to help balance out the horny Warner Brothers, climbing all over every woman they loved.
Yeah, I couldn't believe they got to like pull. She like takes a bath in the first one.
That's
like,
right. That's how it starts, I think.
Yeah. So
little something for Daddy.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Which I don't know. They wouldn't. When they would draw hunks, it still felt like the male gaze of a hunk too.
Well,
like, I guess this is what ladies like.
It's a man drawing it if a woman's writing it on Animaniacs usually.
But a man who's not attracted to men.
Yes, exactly.
Think. Yeah.
Sorry for my heteronormative statement there. I apologize.
No. But yeah, I just when watching that episode again, it ends with her seeing a hunky dude and getting turned on, and it's just very much just a broad-chested Hulk type dude with basically Jason Priestley or Luke Perry kind of outfit. Actually, very similar to Johnny Pugh from Tiny Toons.
Right.
I think Minerva, like Fifi, grew up to be Minerva Mink. I think
and got
that's
her
where
stink gland removed.
Yes. Yeah.
We could talk about just the history of just the production of the show in terms of the seasons that were put out. So. It started off with a huge order for Fox. So, one season, 65 episodes, as we talked about before with these syndicated shows or like Fox shows, there would be a huge order and you would run through every episode 5 days a week until like December, and that would be it, usually forever. Mm-hmm. With things like Tiny Toons, they were popular enough to get picked up by Fox and, put into production again. So Animaniacs was a huge hit right out of the gate. A huge hit, like immediately successful. And of course, you would think, well, Fox would just want to order more, right? And I spoiled it earlier, but they didn't because Warner Brothers was moving the show to their own network. But Fox was like, well, I guess we can order a few more. How many things are already written? And they're like, we can come up with 4 episodes worth of content. And they were like, well, we'll order 4 episodes then. So that, like, essentially, Animaniacs was dead on the air for a year. So in 1993, 65 episodes air over and over and over again. In 1994-95, 4 episodes are added to that rotation. So for 2 years, you're watching the same 69 episodes for just 2 years.
It felt special when I got to the one new one like that. You couldn't see when broadcasts were going to come back around and have a new episode. So you just tune in every day and hope it was one you hadn't seen before. You didn't know exactly when more would come. But yeah, it was in the mid-90s, they changed the laws on broadcasting. So both Paramount and Warner Brothers could own their own channels and just make the content and sell it. Like there's a Fox making shows, Fox broadcasting shows made by Warner. That's just how the system worked because Fox normally couldn't make its own shows and then broadcast it as well. Like that is monopolistic. And it honestly, that wall shouldn't have been broken down. But since it was, Warner had in '93, especially Batman and Animaniacs, they had the top-rated shows, so they were going to take them to their new channel. But it also takes time to start a new channel.
Yeah,
so.
like the start of Kids WB was built around Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain. Like those are the two things that were exclusive to that network. And I just looked, so season 2 aired like sporadically. So think about this: there are 65 episodes just circling in rotation every weekday. And so, like, every couple of weeks in September to November, you'd get one new season 2 episode. And once all 4 of those were out, that was it for the Fox run. Yeah. So that's what happened there. So when it moved to Kids WB, when the WB network had started in the fall of 95, a great Saturday morning lineup for this network that unfortunately not everyone got. Like way more people got Fox than a new syndicated network.
Yeah. I was lucky in my area that we had Kids WB, or we had WB and UPN. And both were looking to get into the kids' morning block right when cable was really taking off with original programming and starting to challenge Saturday mornings.
So for Kids WB's first season of Animaniacs, they ordered 13 episodes. Not bad, not quite 65, but they're, a smaller network, not as much money as, being backed by Fox, and, probably getting smaller audiences with, being a newer syndicated block of programming. So they get to make 13 more. They think they're going to get 18 more for the 96-97 season. That order is cut to 8. And that is when a lot of people leave the show, like out of protest, no, you can't, you're killing our show. You can't do this.
Times were changing.
Yes. And while this was happening, Warner Brothers was putting all of their money on Pinky and the Brain being the big crossover hit. So it's like Pinky and the Brain also got a 13-episode season for season 1. Season 2 was like 33 episodes. Like they wanted to make as many as possible because they thought like this could be our Simpsons. Like this could be our Simpsons show for kids and adults. Unfortunately, it wasn't. Go back to our episode. You can learn about why. But as they were cooling off on Animaniacs, they were like, Pinky and the Brain is the thing that will stick.
Yeah, I mean, Animaniacs, it's just a tale as old as time that it didn't hit the right demo. Like they also, we forgot in the Fox thing too, another angle of it was Power Rangers got bigger ratings than Animaniacs and was cheaper.
Yeah, and eventually, like, Animaniacs would end just as Pokemon began.
Yes.
The writing was on the wall. And what bothers me about Animaniacs, the last segment is just clips.
Yes.
It's just like, remember how good the show was? Well, not for long.
It feels like a final send-off of, like, they know this is the end of an era. Like, they only got to do one more show like Animaniacs, and that was only because the government mandated educational programming be on Kids WB.
They got away with making one more expensive show.
Yeah.
Because it was mandatory.
Yep. Maybe I meant it was more of a tax write-off too for the
that could
Warner.
Be. We can't lose money on this.
Well, I guess we'll learn someday when we do Hysteria.
We'll do it at some point. I am curious about that series. So I have one thing to add before we start the discussion, but Henry, you wanted to talk about the reboots.
Yeah, I mean, there really hasn't been any news on it since, other than when the very sad information about John Kay came out. It also was talked about how one of his victims was also, she is show running the new Animaniacs. So we know the creators who are working on it. My theory is, with HBO Max just announced, I think even though it was on Hulu, I'm thinking Warner Brothers has changed their mind and they're not going to premiere Animaniacs reboot on Hulu. They're taking it back and putting it on HBO.
Could be.
That is my theory.
The only other news I've heard about it was Maurice LaMarche announcing that the cast had returned for the show.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a good sign because, Paul Rugg, he was asked about it and was open of just like, I took a meeting with the Animaniacs people, but ultimately decided, I'm not going to do it. I already wrote I wrote 99 Animaniacs. I can move on with my life.
Yeah, and he's gainfully employed. I follow his Instagram now. He's working for like the Jim Henson Company and doing
so
cool
much
stuff.
Fun.
Yeah,
He's his Instagram is funny times.
You could see why he was Freakazoid.
Yes, he just is.
The one note I want to add, and I think I added this to the episode we did a few years ago for Retronauts, is there's a super great Tumblr. Remember when there were Tumblrs, and remember when there were like blog posts and episode recaps? We have moved past that era, sadly. All websites are disappearing, but Tumblr still exists as of this recording. There's a very nice Tumblr called Hello Nice Warners. You can find it just by typing in "Hello, Nice Warner's Tumblr." And this person, who I believe might have even commented on that, Retronauts, they did an episode. They did an entry for every episode with like who animated it, the studio, often production details. It's often, I would say, needlessly in depth because no one will find this blog anymore. But I have to credit this person because no one else did this work, and sadly, it's just lost on a Tumblr.
Oh man!
Yeah.
Well,
this could be a book. This could be like a book. They could publish this as a book.
Okay, I'm gonna head there today. Then, yeah, that is very thanks.
And just, I mean, I read it as it went live. I read every entry as they were new, and it's like I started understanding the differences between the animation studios. Like, okay, the ACOM's Warner's look like this, and Wang's look like this, and here's how the differences in how they move. And like now, when I've carried that knowledge to other shows where it's like that's ACOM, I could tell immediately. Unlike I can always tell TMS, but everything else is sort of fuzzy. Outside of Star Toons.
It's all fuzzy.
Exactly.
It's I loved that is getting more known about the different studios that do that. So I'm totally gonna check that out. That guy's page. I also, Tom Ruger, his Twitter account, he's been sharing some like lost to time deleted scenes from Animaniacs or Tiny Toons, or also just jokes they animated just for themselves.
Yeah.
Like 10-second gags or whatever.
And his blog is really good too. Of course, I went to his blog. The last blog post was about Platypus Duck. He can't let it down.
Hey, it's his blog. He can talk about all of Platypus Duck all he wants.
Hulu reboot of Platypus Duck in 2025. But yes, we're going to take a brief break and come back to talk about Animaniacs Episode 2.
And we're zany to the max. So just sit back and relax. You'll laugh till you collapse. We're Animaniacs. Come join the Warner Brothers
and the Warner sister Dot.
Just for fun, we run around the Warner movie lot. They lock us in the tower whenever we get caught. But we break loose and then the moose, and now you know the plot. We're Animaniacs. Dot is cute and Yakko yaks. Wacko packs away the snacks while Bill Clinton plays the sax. We're Animaniacs.
I'm an Animaniac. Some people say I'm out of whack. You can't miss our Wilder show with my cute sis and my bro. We all act like we're insane along with Pinky and the Brain, Bobby Squid and Pesto, Scratch and Sniff, Hip Hip Pose, Rito Runt, Chicken Boo, Slappy Doo. We dance and sing and do all kinds of crazy things. Oh, we're the amazing Animaniacs. We'll split your sides in half. We are the most exciting ever. So watch us 'cause you'll love us. We'll be on your TV weekday afternoons right here on Fox.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the ad break for the What a Cartoon episode of Animaniacs. I'm Bob Mackey, and my pants are currently full of lunch meat. It's very uncomfortable. Henry, how's it going?
Hey, it's Henry Gilbert, and I'm doing what I do every night, Pinky. This podcast.
Exactly.
Hey.
We're doing a lot of podcasts lately. But yes, we hope you're enjoying this Animaniacs podcast so far. And if you want to help support our network and get every podcast 1 week ahead of time and ad-free, please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, and you can sign up at the $5 level. You'll get those advanced podcasts, but also you will have access to all of the podcasts behind that $5 paywall. Everything we've been doing for the past 2.5 years. That's hundreds of hours of content. Too much to list in this ad break alone, but you'll get access to all of our miniseries. The most recent one is rolling out right now through the end of the year. It is Talking Futurama Season 2, Part 1. 10 new episodes of Talking Futurama. If you enjoy Talking Simpsons or What a Cartoon, then you should enjoy our treatment of Talking Futurama with our typical podcast style. And Henry can tell you what is happening at the $10 level, extra long podcast every month, once a month for our $10 patrons.
That's right. If you enjoy What a Cartoon, but wished it was twice as long and about a feature film that's animated, then you want to listen to What a Cartoon Movie, where we do just that once a month with choices picked by our listeners. For $10 and up patrons right now, they can listen to over 4 hours of conversation about Toy Story, the Pixar classic. And that's just our most recent one. If you signed up today, you get access to the entire back catalog, over 40 hours of What a Cartoon fun. That includes films like The Nightmare Before Christmas, Aladdin, the 1992 version, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, Kiki's Delivery Service, Akira, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and if you're an Animaniacs fan, I bet you'll love our one for Tiny Toons, How I Spent My Vacation. That the direct-to-video classic we had a ton of fun with. You can only hear those in full if you are a $10 and up patron at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. So please consider signing up there today.
And if you've never used Patreon before, it's very easy. Once you sign up, you get a nice little code. You have access to that code at all times. You just drop that into whatever you use to listen to podcasts, and you can easily fit us into your podcasting lifestyle. There is also a free Patreon app. You can also use that to download our bonus podcasts and listen to them as you would any of your regular other podcasts. But yes, thanks so much for listening to this break. We'll let you get back to the Animani, totally insane world of Animaniacs.
Those are the facts.
Everybody lives on a street, in a city or a village or a town for what it's worth. And they're all inside a country which is part of a continent that sits upon a planet known as Earth. And the Earth is a ball full of oceans and some mountains which is out there spinning silently in space. And living on that Earth are the plants and the animals and also the entire human race. It's a great big universe and we're all really puny. We're just tiny little specks about the size of Mickey Rooney. It's big and black and inky and we are small and dinky. It's a big universe and we're not. And we're part of a vast interplanetary system stretching 700 billion miles long. With 9 planets and a sun, we think the Earth's the only one that has life on it, although we could be wrong. Across the interstellar voids are a billion asteroids, including meteors and Halley's Comet too. And there's over 50 moons floating out there like balloons in a panoramic trillion-mile view. And still it's all a speck amid 100 billion stars in a galaxy we call the Milky Way. It's 60,000 trillion miles from one end to the other, and still that's just a fraction of the way. 'Cause there's 100 billion galaxies that stretch across the sky, filled with constellations, planets, moons, and stars. And still the universe extends to a place that never ends, which is maybe just inside a little jar.
It's a great big universe and we're all really puny. We're just tiny little specks about the size of Mickey Rooney. Though we don't know how we got here, we're an important part here. It's a big universe and it's ours.
So we're back to talk about Animaniacs episode 2, and because these are all segments, the episodes have like no real names.
Yeah, they don't, unless it's one that is a full-length episode like Taming of the Screwy. You can't really call them anything other than just the name of the segments. Like this one on Hulu, it's just the 4 segment names in a row.
And there's not even like a title card on Yakko's World, which I find weird. Like, like for a song this great, I would want to hear the lyricist up front or see it up front.
Yeah, why the lack of a title card is surprising.
That really is. But this episode begins with a prologue that I think is kind of unnecessary, but they would eventually get rid of it. But it is episode 2. If you were a kid, you just saw episode 1 the other day, and if you're just tuning in, you're like, what is the premise of this show? And they tell you up front in the newsreel of the stars.
Newsreel of the stars. Dateline Hollywood 1930, the Warner Brothers studio. Here at the studio's new animation department, the artist toiled endlessly to come up with cartoon stars, ultimately creating 3 new characters, the Warner Brothers and their sister Dot.
Oh, nurse!
Unfortunately, the Warner kids were totally out of control.
Boingy, 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 boingy.
The trio ran amok throughout the studio until their capture. The Warner's films, which made absolutely no sense, were locked away in the studio vault, never to be released. As for the Warners themselves, they were locked away in the studio water tower, also never to be released. Publicly, the studio has disavowed any knowledge of the Warners' existence to this very day, when the Warners escaped.
So you really need that, I guess, in the very beginning of your series, especially at this time where you can't look up on the internet, like, what is the premise of Animaniacs?
In case you missed the Monday premiere, it's Tuesday. You get another shot at seeing what the story is for them. This is the week after my 11th birthday.
Ooh.
And
what a time to be alive.
1 week earlier, I'd seen the premiere of Bonkers, and now I'm seeing this.
You were ready to laugh.
You put these next to each other, it's an easy choice.
It really
between
is.
them, but
especially with the opening. So comparing, this is not just going to be Bonkers comparisons, but Bonkers wretched theme song, and the opening animation is just nothing but clips from different studios and different eras of Bonkers. This is just like pure gold TMS animation, Tokyo Movie Shinsha, and an amazing song. Like one of the best, no, you're right, the best of this era songs.
I think it's the best song and the best animated intro, too. I mean, it is from... They knew what they did right on the Tiny Toons theme song of just, here's every character, here's an upbeat TMS animated introduction of every character in a series of little sight gags. But this, turns up the volume on it, speeds it up, has even crazier characters and even wilder takes, and doesn't even have to be like, oh, and we're fans of Bugs Bunny or whatever. They don't even do that.
Bugs Bunny hardly endorses this event or product.
Oh God, this opening is just perfect. And I guess we should have said at the front, I think we're both card-carrying members of the Please, Please, Please Get a Life Foundation.
Oh, they're going to come up in this episode. Don't you worry.
Yeah, but God, this opening, I mean, it also lets you see what a great singer, and also just good in harmony, Yakko, Wacko, and Dot, Rob Paulson, Tress McNeil, and Jess Harnell, how good they are singing together. And that it starts with them just like da, 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 da. And last thing I'll say, I like that they keep this intro in the newsreel intro, because when they say until today, when the Warners escaped, that made it feel special of like, I'm watching history happen.
It's unfolding in front of my eyes.
Them busting out of the water tower at the very start of this opening is the day they escaped, and craziness is here. That's how I always read it.
That is an interesting take. I do like that. But they would eventually rewrite the opening and write Pinky and the Brain out of it. So it's like they were the first characters mentioned because obviously they knew like these are going to be the best characters. So it's like meet Pinky and the Brain who want to rule the universe. And I think the replacement lyrics is like say something Dr. Scratch and Sniff, say hi to Hello Nurse.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
so it's like something Dr. Scratch, but they write Pinky and the Brain out of the song once they get their own series.
It hurts the speed of it for sure. Yeah,
I think it's just like I think it's like a different animation.
Yeah, I think it's a Wang or an ACOM in there. Yeah, which is also very distracting. Whenever they're tag was not a TMS tag in the song, it also would take me out of it.
And we're mega TMS fanboys, which is why I'm so depressed that Pinky and the Brain episode on this is not a TMS.
No, not even.
I thought it was. I remembered it as being like all TMS.
Yeah. It's even before the Tokyo Movie Shinsa version, which was animated on the ones.
It was, yeah, that pullout. We'll get into that later, though.
I am directly quoting the guy from Please, Please, Please Get a Life.
Well, that's how we talk normally, so I don't remember. So yeah, the first is Yakko's World, the first actual thing. So no title card on this, but I will tell you.
Yeah, what the hell, man?
Who was behind it? If anyone needs a title card, it's this entire song. So Randy Rogel is the writer of Yakko's World. The earliest writing credits I could find was he was a writer at Batman the Animated Series, and he wrote the two-parter Robin's Reckoning and also the two-parter Two-Face episodes and some other episodes. But he submitted this song to Animaniacs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, man, I didn't know he was. So he just wrote this independent of the Animaniacs writers' room, but was like, this is good for you guys. Like, I mean, this could have been on Sesame Street or just any other. This is a hysteria segment. Honestly.
It really is. Like, there is a strange educational component to this episode where it's just like, number one, you learn about all of the some of the countries, most of the countries. Number two, you learn about Albert Einstein. There's like a weird like semi-educational component to at least this part of Animaniacs.
Yeah.
It's very strange. So yeah, Randy Rogel, he would eventually become the lyricist for Animaniacs, like writing a billion songs, including the lesser follow-up Wacko's America. I just think Turkey in the Straw is not as fun of a song. If you're stealing like folk songs, not as fun as the Mexican hat dance.
Well, and also like I like hearing Yakko sing words too. I mean there are many parodies of it. The Yakko sings every word in the English language song.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
That was such a good one. But oh yeah, I meant to say though in that opening, by the way, it's pay or play contracts. The closed captioning was wrong when it said for.
I hate when the closed captioning is wrong, and it also applies to Frinkiac because I think Frinkiac takes the closed captioning caption. So when I see people quoting Frankie with the wrong things, my brain starts boiling all over again. I mean, we're doing this job for a reason, people. We are podcasters for a reason.
I did double check that on Hulu, they do have it in the subtitles as or. They are pay or play contracts in the Hulu subtitles as well, which is good. They finally got that correct.
I'm glad. And that means essentially a pay or play contract means when you sign the contract, whether or not the production actually happens, you still get paid.
Yeah. Which, again, that's them bragging about what good contracts they have to make this show.
Or how non-committed they are.
Yes.
Like, we don't care about this.
And that just shows how, like, again, Tiny Toons was already kind of inside with, like, episodes like Sepulveda Boulevard. But this is, like, to start in the opening song to sing about the specificities of Hollywood like work contracts.
Things you read in Variety are appearing in the opening for Animaniacs. So, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go back from
No,
Yakko's
it's okay.
World,
Yakko's World was directed by Rusty Mills. Although I couldn't find the source that I read this on originally, but I heard that they were like TMS was basically sent not a lot of material, so they just started from beginning and just did it all themselves. And I think a short about a character pointing to 1,000 countries must be impossible to storyboard. Because think of the specificity of having to draw like a map for every square of the storyboard. Like, where is Yakko pointing now? Like that, it feels like an impossible thing to storyboard. You just need to work it out just from scratch if you're sending it overseas.
Yeah, I mean, it just has to be everything is a keyframe of just like what you can't say. How do you storyboard? Like, okay, first United States, next storyboard Canada, next storyboard Mexico.
That just seems like needless work. I mean, and there's also not what I think this what makes this short interesting is that Yakko doesn't do a lot outside of point to things. There's a little like dancey business here and there, but all he's doing is pointing to things. But it's still fascinating because it's just so snappily done.
The stripped down nature of it makes it fun. I think too that's why some of the repeats or things done in tribute to this, like Wacko's America, like that added too many extra things to it. It had like it didn't just start with like, here's a map and he's going to dance around. Like it embellished more.
It was like a game show parody it started with or something like that.
Yeah. He fails at the end because he didn't put it in the form of a question.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that was the joke.
But this is just like perfect of like just a combination of TMS at their best with such like precision. Plus you have Rob Paulson's perfect singing.
Did it in one take.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And he can still do it. He can still do it.
Yeah, I heard he still just shows it off. Even I saw out there, I didn't see the clip of where he did it, but there's like an updated lyrics of like countries that exist now.
We'll hear that soon. I have a clip of that.
Great.
Don't worry. But yeah, he can do it now without even seeing the lyrics. But so back to Rusty Mills. He also directed the Emmy Award winning Pinky and the Brain Christmas episode, also done by TMS. And that is the episode that beat Mother Simpson that year for the Emmy.
Poor Mother Simpson.
Both very good. I like Mother Simpson a little more, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we are the Simpsons guys. That makes sense. But yeah, I agree.
And so Rusty Mills started as a storyboard artist on Tiny Toons, eventually was a director on the Halloween special, which was very seldom seen, and that's on Hulu too. Go check that out. It's so beautiful and so well done.
It's like the finale. It's the last one I think they made.
I think it's basically the last episode of Tiny Toons.
Yeah,
but,
and it's TMS. It's TMS.
Yeah.
It is TMS at 75% compared to TMS at 100% on How I Spent My Vacation, but it's still gorgeous looking.
And Rusty Mills also directed Wacko's Wish. So outside of directing several Animaniacs, unfortunately, he passed away fairly young at 49 in 2012. So, a lot too many deaths in this episode so far.
Yeah, this is heavy.
But, Yakko's World, of course, this is a hard song to clip because it's just a 2-minute song. So why don't we just hear the beginning of it?
And now, the nations of the world, brought to you by Yakko Warner.
United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Haiti, Jamaica, Peru, Republic, Dominican, Cuba, Caribbean, Greenland, El Salvador, too, Puerto Rico, Colombia, Venezuela, Honduras, Guyana, and still Guatemala, Bolivia, then Argentina, and Ecuador, Chile, Brazil, Costa Rica, Belize, Nicaragua, Bermuda, Bahamas, Tobago, San Juan, Paraguay, Uruguay, Suriname, and French Guiana, Barbados, and Guam.
So what I like about this song is that there's very little business outside of this naming the countries, where I think the only thing I can think of is Germany now whole again or whatever.
Yeah, Germany now in one piece.
Now in one piece, yeah. But in the I'm comparing this to Wacko's Capital song, where it's just like there's a lot of like lyrics about the places. It's not just a list of things that we somehow made rhyme. It's also like a lot of like talking about like you can do this in this state, you can do that in that state. Here it's just like no, we looked at a bunch of countries, omitted 40, and then made the rest of them rhyme because 40 countries are missing.
Yeah. There's only so much you can fit into this too. They have to cheat a couple times to add extra words, but mostly it is just rhyming of the city. Yeah, they keep having to embellish them more, but I just like how simple this is. Like that, it feels special when he does do just a little extra on like Guam. He goes like Guam, and then there's a little head shake to it too. Like that just feels like a TMS choice.
Oh God, yeah. So one thing I noticed, and this is the TMS drinking game now, so get out your booze. But one thing I noticed is that this is a very clean song and how it's edited, where Rob Paulsen has to breathe, take a lot of deep breaths to get through these lyrics, these long lists of songs, especially when the tempo speeds up. I can tell as someone who edits podcasts, they cut out like every breath. But TMS animates Yakko breathing in like really deeply before he starts a new line. Like even though there's no breath on the soundtrack, they thought that much about it. Now I'm very conscious of my own breathing on this podcast. Yeah.
It just feels natural though, like you're watching a person perform. Like it feels like the next episode after this is I am the very model of a cartoon individual. But in that, it feels too edited, I think, and it feels like kind of pitched up and sped up. It feels too much of a cheat, even though I think Rob Paulsen probably did it well. I think that's why like this one also works in its simplicity because it doesn't feel like they futzed around with the audio too much to make it work. It's as long as it took him to say all the countries, and they programmed the episode's shorts around that.
So this song is set to, correct me if I have this pronunciation wrong, but Jarabe Tapatio, otherwise known as the Mexican Hat Dance. And I do have an updated version from 2017 where he sang this on The Nerdist, where it's like a new verse with like some new countries involved. And even at the time, it was slightly out of date with what the names of some countries were and like what was actually a country because, we'll get to the Please Get a Life Foundation, but I have a correction coming up. But if you've ever wondered where Jessica Chobot went, she's standing next to Rob Paulsen in this clip.
Montenegro and Bosnia, Herzegovina, the Soviet Union is gone. South Africa, Georgia, Moldova, Latvia, Belarus, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, hey, Kazakhstan, hey, then there's Tajikistan too, hey, Turkmenistan, hey, Dagestan, Armenia, Tonga, Palau, Lithuania, Serbia, Kosovo, US, Samoa, the Balkans, Brunei, Macau and Crimea, then Eritrea, Ukraine and Estonia, here's Macedonia, New Caledonia, then Eastern Slavonia, Ivory Coast and Cape Verde, Andorra, the Solomon Islands, Dubai. Goodbye.
It's funny that he's sitting next to, esteemed games journalist Jessica Chobot because his son is in the games press.
Oh, I forgot. He's a gamer writer.
Gamer American.
Yeah, Gamer American. I totally forgot about that, about Rob Paulsen's son. Wow. Well, I mean, yeah, I did he just write that himself, I wonder? But,
I assume so because, Randy Rogel's still alive, but I don't think he consulted him.
No, but that's a great update. I mean, that's what the world was demanding. Like, the Kosovo exists now. It's time to recognize it.
And what I also like about the song that I forgot, and I hope it's in everyone's head right now, is that the tempo speeds up like 3 times. So it's hard enough to just get through this list of countries, but he does it as the song gets faster.
Yeah,
and then it just ends. It just like immediately ends when he's done the map rolls up. Yeah,
boom. Yeah, I mentioned that cartoon individual, but it works in a similar way as the classic Pirates of Penzance song. It's parodying the
Modern Major
General, because in that you're already impressed with how fast that song is going, and then the general like goes like, come on now, really? Dun, 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 dun. And so in the same with this, it's like Yakko doesn't go, let's go faster, or now let's speed it up. That's kind of what I like about it too, that you just see the character's legs kick a little faster and he bounces up and down a little faster. And it's like in your first viewing as a little kid, for me, I was like bouncing up and down, like he's going faster. Oh, how much more faster can this get?
Yeah, I mean, up front I said animation is a magic trick. So this is like a triple magic trick. It's like number one, you're watching drawings and you think it's a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Number two, it's also a trick in that, like, we made all of these countries' names rhyme. And number three, we made a guy pointing at things interesting for 2 minutes. That's all he's doing.
And how the countries light up too. I really like that. That almost feels like an extra level of effort from TMS. They have to like double exposure to have these lit up countries on the map. And also too, they cheated sometimes, like when he goes Guam and he has to move over on the map a big bunch. But a lot of the times he's like, well, this set of lines is just about African countries, and he's just pointing around to Africa. Like it does feel almost region specific too.
And it's interesting to think, like, often the most mundane things take the hardest to plan out and animate. So it's just like, where will this character be at all times for every one of these lyrics? Like, we need to know in advance. So I'm just thinking of the amount of coordination. But this is like I think this is like the standout thing of the first season outside of Pinky and the Brain. Like, this is what people took the most from. Like, number one, it could be like, oh, this is wholesome. It teaches you something. But number two, just like, what an amazing, like, catchy song, and what a feat of just like rhyming ability.
I mean, it sold so many like tapes and CDs just to hear this song. Like, it sold a lot of soundtracks. I think, like, what is the most memorable thing from Animaniacs? What do people remember the most? This might be it. Like, this scene right here. I mean, maybe Pinky and the Brain more as just an export from it, but it's like a segment of Animaniacs. What's the first one people remember? It's probably this
Haiti,
one.
Jamaica, Peru. Yeah, they would start singing at least the first 5 countries. And United States comes first, buddy. We're number one.
Number one.
But Israel and Palestine are different territories.
That is controversial. Yes, yeah. That he says Palestine at the end. He points at it on the map. It's where it should be. I feel like they'd say, like, let's not get into that whole business there. Let's not say Palestine. In rewatching some old Animaniacs, I also did see there was a funny reference to this in a later episode. Do you remember the Beauty and the Beast parody they did?
Oh, yeah.
And that's a TMS favorite as well. And the Beast is Taz in it. It's really funny because they're like, hey, you're Taz. He's like, no, I'm not. They're like, yeah, come on, you're Taz. But so it starts with the Belle song parody, Bonjour. And the bit is that Dot is coming over the horizon with the boys, and she's supposed to say her Princess Angelina Contessa, Luisa Francesca, Banana Fanafo Fresca the Third. She has to say that whole thing, and Dot, the character, it keeps messing up, and they're playing it like Tress is messing up as well, and she's just like getting more and more frustrated in character, and Yakko's giving her crap about it, like, come on, do it, and she's like, you can do it, and then he does it perfectly, and she's like, fine, Mr. United States, Canada, blah, 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 fine.
I'm looking at the wiki entry for the song, and apparently they referenced it a few times. Apparently in the Sound of Music parody, The Sound of Warners, Yakko has a nightmare about messing up the lyrics.
Oh, I remember. Yes, yeah. I remember that one.
But anything else on this episode? Sorry, this segment, Yakko's World. I mean, it's 2 minutes long, and I won't put the whole song in because it's 2 minutes long. You can find it on YouTube or whatever, but it's great.
It was the longest time before I knew it was Germany now in one piece.
Yeah.
Because he kind of...
we all love One Piece.
Yeah, well, he goes like, it sounded like Nawahan Piece, or I was like, wait, is that a country I don't know the name of? Like, well, and also... It's 1993 for adults. It was a new thing that East and West Germany didn't exist
anymore. That was 4 years ago.
But other than hearing about it in The Simpsons, I didn't know it was a big deal that that Germany was now just Germany. Like, pretty much for my lifetime as a person who knew of the existence of Germany, it's been Germany to me. Mm-hmm. After Yakko says Sudan... Honestly, the episode kind of just goes downhill after that. It's still a great episode.
Very good, yeah.
It peaks early.
You get all the flavors of this cartoon. You get a very strong song, a good Warner segment, and the first Pinky and the Brain segment. So let's talk about Cookies for Einstein. So this episode, or rather segment, I keep screwing that up. This segment, written by Paul Rugg, the creator and voice of Freakazoid, and just a very talented guy. We talked about him earlier. You probably know him. So despite all the work he's done, people probably most know him now as the very calm man explaining his little chihuahua as it attacks his hand. Like the handheld chihuahua just like ravenously gumming him as he's just like, well, owning a dog is very difficult sometimes.
And petting a dog really helps relax you, and it can add years to your life. All it's like,
He's done a lot of videos with that dog, but when that first hit Facebook, I was like, that's Paul Rugg.
Yeah.
What's he doing?
I see now all my favorite improvisers of today who do podcasts and are starting to get cast as voices in cartoons. The generation of LA improvisers 30 years before them, they're the ones who got hired by Warner Brothers. Like, it's all these guys and girls who are the top improvisers. Like, that's why they're just so naturally funny and they can adapt more to Instagram than a lot of other writers could. Like, I would bet the writers of He-Man couldn't do highly snackable content.
They would never. In fact, they're probably all dead now.
Oh, only a few.
Actually, he went to, I believe it was the Acme LA Improv Theater, which is appropriate for where he would end up working. But he would be on the same stage with John McCann, who would later write for Freakazoid. I believe he wrote for Animaniacs. Yeah,
Yes.
he's in the credits. And also Adam Carolla.
Wow.
Turned out to be not so funny, but they were all together in... I don't consider Adam Carolla to be an improv guy in
Not
LA.
really.
I think he's just full of hatred, and you
Yeah.
need joy in your heart to be an improv comic, right?
I mean, whenever it's funny that he talks about what a normal guy he is, because like 40 years ago he worked as a roofer. It's like, yeah, and then you move to Hollywood to get famous like everybody.
He said, screw everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. But no, Rugg, like, he worked under Stoner in the LA improv scene of that Acme Comedy, and so he pitched to be a writer on the show when they were staffing up for Animaniacs, and what a hire that was for them. Man.
Yeah, like a real superstar. It's no wonder he got his own show after this. So, like, he started with Warner with the Tiny Toons Halloween special. He then would, join Animaniacs to develop that, and he would just immediately become a voice actor on the show. Like, he's playing Einstein, he'll play Mr. Director, he'll play a lot of incidental voices, and then would eventually become the main character in Freakazoid.
Because I think just Tom Ruger loves his voice so much. I mean, you have that you see the kind of energy and fun he has in interviews. Like, just on the Freakazoid DVDs, they have a making of doc with him.
Yeah.
And he is just a magnetic, funny personality you just want to keep seeing perform. He's just such a funny guy.
I think we can interview him. We got to find him.
It's totally
He seems
doable.
easy to track down. He's always online. So
I think we could just go on his doorstep on our next trip to Los Angeles and be like, so, Mr. Rugg. He's like, please come in.
Can I meet your dog?
I found one. He does a lot of interviews too, so that's also why I think he's probably pretty gettable for us. I found one where it made it sound like Cookies for Einstein was his first script he wrote too.
Interesting, huh?
Well, he talked. So in the interview I read, they asked him about like what was the pitching process, and he's the example of how he learned to pitch and do an episode is Cookies for Einstein. Like, he's like, let's do an Einstein episode. Well, where do we go with that? Okay, here's the light outline. Now go write it. He said, like, now everything, he says, when comparing it to today, he says, now today you just have a very long pitch, and then your outline, and then your revised outline, then your revised outline, then your revised outline, and then your revised outline.
Yeah, make sure all the energy is drained out of it.
He said Animaniacs completely spoiled him for being a writer in Hollywood.
It seems like a lot of these early shows did like ruin the rest of careers for people. Like anyone who worked on The Simpsons and then left was just like, man, Hollywood sucks.
In both of those cases, it's either like Spielberg protected them from bullshit notes or James L. Brooks protected them from bullshit notes. It's almost like those notes are useless and make shows worse.
And justify jobs that shouldn't exist, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of job justifying that goes around around here on
the
Bonkers.
one good joke from that Bonkers. So
there's a couple.
There's a few. So true millennials could know him as Manny the Uncanny from One Saturday Morning, playing like the sort of mad scientist character.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you were like, we're like fraud millennials, we were born in 82. Like the true millennials came after us. We have no space in this world, but you probably grew up with One Saturday Morning because they abducted Nickelodeon and Warner Brothers talent to make their own Saturday morning block.
As they were all feeling more unwelcome as WB was turning away from the Spielberg shows, Disney, at least the ABC part of Disney, was more than ready to embrace those kind of guys. We talked a bit about that in our Weekenders episode of What a Cartoon.
That is true. So the director for this segment is Alfred Gimeno. He started working for Trash. So he worked in the 80s as a character designer for things like the original My Little Pony, the Smurfs, and Popeye and Son. But, hey, he just was hired to draw characters.
Yeah,
all right?
he didn't pitch the show.
But it's bad. We all know. I mean, it's a terrible show.
As a Popeye lover, that might be the lowest point in Popeye.
Violence-free Popeye? No, thank you. When his career really took off is when he became character designer for Tiny Toon Adventures. Bam. Like, he designed the characters for that show.
Finally, he gets a little more prestige after all of that shit. Man.
So, yes, he started his directing career on Tiny Toons. He was one of the sequence directors on the Summer Vacation movie, and he also directed a bunch of Animaniacs. So the most relevant thing he's worked on recently was a show on Disney called The 7D. It is a weird Seven Dwarfs reboot that like other Warner Brothers Silver Age talent worked on, like Paul Rugg.
Wow.
And it was like a 2014 to 2016 show. It just is, the name The 7D tells you nothing about it.
Yeah, if I had seen, when you tell me it is starring the dwarves, that's fun. Like, I'd have probably at least checked out a clip from it. A show called 7D on Disney. I'm like, what the fuck is
Sounds
that?
like a sci-fi show or something, but yeah.
I mean, was it because somebody told them dwarves was too spicy a word?
Maybe.
now?
I say, why even bother with that idea in the first place?
Yeah. Well, the dwarves sell whatever merchandise they have because just people like, yeah, I am grumpy. Look at my shirt.
That describes who I am. It's like sort of wearing the I'm an asshole song, Dennis the Other song. Just
all
like,
the lyrics on your back.
this shirt excuses me from anything I do. What I like about this Cookies for Einstein parody, or segment rather, is that up front in the beginning of the episode, like, this is the premise of the show. These are, escaped 30s cartoon characters running amok in Hollywood. And then we get to this segment, but also they exist outside of time and interact with the historical figures. Like, what is the premise of Animaniacs? What am I doing? Like, I didn't question it. When I sat down for this research, I'm like, wait a minute. Like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
They outright say it's 1905 in this.
Yeah.
And again, in like 2 episodes, I think it is, they'll be helping Michelangelo paint naked people.
Yeah.
So I love how they say that over and over, like, oh, we love to paint naked people. It's just like, this is a church, buddy. Come on.
And I love how that's Kirk Douglas, and I didn't realize that until I watched it again.
I think that's why Einstein, this is a good one of these kids bother a historical figure one, but it's not great because I think Einstein's not as stiff a figure for them to push up against. Like, they can only be so mean to him.
And doing a fun, wacky German voice Paul Rugg is doing is fine, but there's no real like celebrity impression or movie parody hinges on, because I think the Michelangelo thing is what, The Agony and the Ecstasy? Is that the Michelangelo movie? Yeah, that's sort of what they're doing a parody of.
Yeah, I think, there's nothing as direct to work with there. It's also, I think it's, one of Rugg's first, so comparatively in his voice acting career, this is a very toned down Paul Rugg.
Yeah, at first I didn't realize it was him. I'm like, it's not as heightened as he would normally bring it.
He like screams once at the end, and I'm like, there's a little of the Rugg I know.
Compare that to the first episode of Freakazoid, where I swear like 45 seconds are just an improv freak out.
It's
everybody down.
That almost was too much for me.
Yeah, I was like, what? They're wasting all this money on this, and I love it. But this is an Animaniacs segment. It begins, of course, with a song.
Open your doors and buy our cookies, your little la 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 lonely. Support the Scouts, get out your wallets, your little la 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 lonely.
Yodelay hee hoo, yodel ah, yodelay hee hee, yodelay laddle yaddle yodel diddle doodle doodle, double dee dee. Sorry, it's the chocolate talking.
Hot chocolate, hot chocolate.
Hello, Swiss Nurse Miss.
Oh, no, you don't. We got cookies to sell.
So yeah, that's a very ends with a very Groucho line.
Yeah.
Was Chico the skirt chaser in the Marx Brothers?
So actually he's kind of, Yakko is both of Harpo. Harpo would chase the pretty ladies. Well, they all would hit on women, for sure. But
they were all sex offenders, number one.
But Groucho was the more business-minded. He'd be like, hey, enough of that. We got to do this. I think it's Yakko kind of shifts between Harpo and Chico, in between the two. So that was a more Chico moment, I'd say.
And the song they're singing in the beginning, you hear it as like a leitmotif throughout this segment. It's got to be some like traditional Swiss song, but I couldn't find out what it was. It's just got to be like some existing like folk or public domain song that they're playing around with in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun, whatever it is. And getting to see Yakko yodel in his Ringo Starr voice, like Jess Arnell, great work there.
He got a yodeling solo in episode 2. So they have one box of cookies left to sell, and it's to Albert Einstein, and Dot remarks that he sounds dreamy.
See, this is Dot's problem. as a horny character. That like the Yakko and Wacko get to be horny for bodacious ladies that are drawn to be sexy.
The buxom Swiss Miss lady,
Yeah.
which they're confusing St. Pauli girl with Swiss Miss because Swiss Miss doesn't have rockin' boobs like that.
But in Dot's case, often she just has to have a crush on like whatever guy they meet who are not attractive men. Like other times they get to do meet a hot guy, but for this episode, she still has to like hit on Einstein, even though he's like drawn like he is when he was in his 70s as well.
That's
like him
true.
in 1905 does not look. He didn't look like this.
It's a fun drawing of him in the Warner style,
Yes.
in the 90s Warner style. So he's working on the theory of relativity, or is he? I say he might not be, according to this clip.
And in Yakko's world, Tibet is not technically a country. And cookies for Einstein, E equals MC squared, is not the relativity formula. It is the mass energy conversion formula. And
There we go. So that's from the Please, Please, Please Get a Life Foundation, a.k.a. Writers discovering the internet and what people are saying in 1995.
I mean, it perfectly captures it. I'm constantly pulling down my shirt to cover my gut.
If you don't recognize Tibet as a country, does that, like, it's very political, right? Is that guy, like,
that's a real choice on
pro-China?
his part,
Yeah.
I guess. But I guess he's pro-China's annexation. Whatever, we had a lot of Tibet concerts when we were growing up.
Yeah.
And I feel like Tibet is no freer now. I don't know if those concerts really did much, but the
Beastie Boys, they helped.
Look, they did all they could. They tried. I love the Beastie Boys, but this Einstein worship in here feels very boomer to me.
Yeah.
And it also reminded me of, I looked up the name of the episode, the Tiny Toons episode Test Stress, where Shirley the Loon gives Plucky Einstein's brain.
I remember
for a math
that.
Test. Yeah.
He gets a gigantic head, right? Like with the
Yes.
balding, gray hair on top.
They kind of do a Dumbo Pink Elephant segment where facts march into Plucky's head until it explodes. And it's another TMS thumbs up on that one.
I closed my eyes and I saw TMS animation in my head. I mean, I do. That's most of the day, anyways. But
but yeah, I think it comes from the same place as Cookies for Einstein, which is, I guess, also a parody. The title is like Flowers for Algernon. I guess it's a reference.
Forgetting what this was, I thought it was going to be a Flowers for Algernon send up or parody, but it's really not. It just sort of borrows the title.
Even the Cookies stuff kind of gets lost.
Yeah,
too.
We don't hear any more about Cookies. I mean, we do kind of, but then it's just about annoying a man.
But man, Paul Rugg's snappiness as a writer is right there from the start, where they go I'm talking about black holes. Do you mean blackheads? I'm not a dermatologist. Oh, then you're I'm a physicist. Oh, you got a cyst? Hey, you should check out. I ain't got a cyst, but he's got a wart. Look at that. Ew. That is so vaudeville fast. That's Paul Rugg is so good at that. That's some quality writing.
Yeah, all the very snappy Marx Brothers puns and one-liners and comebacks. Very, very nice. I do like his this better be important. I'm thinking about black holes. When he's coming to the door.
That is an odd thing to say.
Yeah.
Though my favorite is no, I'm a pianist. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, I love the dirty jokes in this show, but they want to annoy Einstein.
what do you kids want?
You want to buy a yummy box of Kid Scout cookies?
Cookies? What would I do with cookies?
You eat 'em, silly mustache man. Whoa, dumber than advertised.
No, I don't want cookies. I'm trying to unlock the mysteries of the universe. Now be good little scouts and run away.
Goodbye, merit badges.
Oh, my heart aches with the sorrow of 1,000 scouts. No merit badge. I mourn my loss.
Say, those acting classes are really paying off.
Think so?
Don't worry, siblings. We'll sell that nice man a box of cookies or die trying. Or try dying. Or do some tie-dyeing.
A lot of dad jokes by the barrelful in this episode.
Love it.
Yeah, what I like about this, there's a little thing with Dot where a spotlight falls on her and she does her monologue. A lot of shows would just play that for humor, but I like how they applaud her and talk about her acting classes, and she's like, "Oh, thank you." I like that. It's they know it's a bit. They're recognizing it's a bit.
Yeah, that's that feels like how the show in general builds on what Tiny Toons did. You could see a million jokes like that where Babs just goes "Oh, the pain, I can't do this" or whatever. And then the scene would stop and she'd go on to another thing. But this time, other characters can see it too, of just like, oh, that's pretty good acting.
Bonkers would not do this. Bonkers would just cry a lot, and that would be the joke. Like, oh, Bonkers is sad now.
Yeah, I guess the joke would be Lucky wouldn't notice his tears.
No.
That would basically be
negligence is the joke, I guess. We get some fun jokes with Einstein, not making him look very smart. He's measuring the speed of light by turning a light off and like hitting a stopwatch.
That's real
Like,
funny.
boy, that's fast. And he flips over the chalkboard with his, little scrawlings on. The Warner Brothers are there. He refuses the cookies, and he's briefly enchanted by a chia pet. So,
very boomer there for sure. Yeah, all these references to chia pets in cartoons like this made me get a chia pet. Just
even though the joke is they're shitty.
it. Yeah, I mean, Einstein seems to approve. Like, oh, it's so fuzzy. I like that.
And because this is a Warner Brothers cartoon, we get a nice variant on the rabbit season, duck season, where Einstein is refusing the cookies, and Yakko's like, well, if you don't want any, just leave. And he leaves. He walks out of the house, and then he realizes, like, no, I live here, and he comes back. So it's a nice variant on the rabbit season, duck season sort of joke setup.
It wouldn't be a Warner's short if they weren't kicked out on their butts. Like I think just about every person who they drive insane kicks them out of a door onto their butts.
Yeah, they need to be sort of given the permission to be a little more aggressive, and that this assault on their posteriors, I think, gives them that.
It's the old, of course, this means war justification.
Which was
there.
Groucho and then Bugs Bunny, right?
Yes, yeah. So then you have the Groucho ripoff saying it in this from Yakko. But I think one of them even was called, of course, this means Warner.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So, of course, now it is time for the hard sell.
You!
No, this is a you. We're just plain old us.
Why won't you leave me alone?
Boy, have we got a deal for you. For a limited time only. When you buy our cookies, we'll throw in the amazing Acme Pocket Fisherman. The Pocket Fisherman comes complete with fishing pole, tackle box, and potty. He may be small, but he eats.
But wait, there's more. You'll also get the amazing Acme Hair Magnet. A unique solution to fine limp hair.
Smile. You didn't smile.
To get the cookies, Pocket Fisherman, and Hair Magnet, here's how to order.
Hi, I'm Dot, an operator here at Acme. Order now, and we'll also throw in unexplained mysteries of fudge. Call now.
So, yeah, making fun of Ronco products.
Yeah.
Like the Pocket Fisherman not being a little rod you put in your pocket, but an actual little man who apparently shits.
They got away with his shit joke. They're like,
Yeah.
here's the outhouse, but he... the way he says, but he eats, makes it sound like he makes a lot more shit than you'd think he would.
He makes a lot of poop. And I was watching this episode this morning, and I was like, this is kind of the same shtick that Bonkers is doing. Why is this not annoying me? Why is this funny? And I think it's because they take it much further. Like, they cut to a different set with, Dot standing by with, like, a headset. Like, she's in a different reality, like, for the sake of this bit they're doing. Like, Bonkers would put a costume on, but they would never, like, change the reality of the world.
Yeah, first off, most Dot jokes you could sub in Babs, and they're basically
That's
the same
true,
joke.
yeah.
But I think it's about the power over reality. I think it is that Bonkers can only change so much in his world. So at least in the Lucky episodes, when he does something to annoy Lucky, it looks like somebody trying too hard, and so you're more on Lucky's side, who just goes like, Bonkers, it's not funny, stop. But when you're the Animaniacs, you actually can create camera cuts. You get brand new costumes.
Sets.
You can have a book full of fudge. All of those, they have so much more power that you're on their side. And also their voices aren't annoying.
That's
There's
true.
also
It's
that.
not a Bonkers voice. Yeah, but I was thinking, this is about cartoon characters annoying a human with cartoony shtick. Why is this much funnier, more entertaining? But you really explained it well.
Yeah, I'm into just the editing. The pace is so much faster. It takes Bonkers way more time to annoy people. I think too. Maybe Bonkers comes off as passive aggressive instead of the Warners are jerks because they want to be jerks and they like to bug people. Bonkers is like, I'm so friendly. Hey. Oh, and then he'll be like a jerk to you, and you're like, "Hey, are you friendly or what, Bonkers? What's this about?"
I gotta say, you've gotten a little too good at the Bonkers voice.
Not about covering baby face.
Oh my God, Henry, are you doing this like in the bathroom, like
not.
in front of the mirror, just like I must become Bonkers?
The Bonk Man shall be mine.
Oh, I should give you a Bonkers update. So if you heard our last episode about Bonkers, congratulations, you made it through. We're proud of you. But number 2, I started looking up what presents did Bonkers have in the Disney parks. And I found, this is dipping into Podcast the Ride territory, but I found at least 2 live shows where Bonkers was present.
Wow.
And the one I saw was the 1994 live show, or maybe 93, when Bonkers was the new star, and the Disney Afternoon live show was built around Bonkers.
What?
And
oh, come on.
Max Goof, voiced by the late Dana Hill. So number 1, I love seeing these because it's unique voice lines from people who might be dead. They added their voices to these characters. But also, Dana Hill is like, "Oh, it's Bonkers. Come on out, Bonkers." And not only has Bonkers come out, but Mickey Mouse comes out and sings the Bonkers song.
What?
And I was like, and it's Wayne Allwine, the voice of Mickey at the time, singing the Bonkers song.
Oh my God.
With Max Goof. I'm like, Mickey is so above. Mickey should not be doing this. This should not even be online. This makes him look bad.
That's
like,
also...
Once upon a time in Toontown, there was a cat that had it all. I was like,
terrible. That, especially because they were so protective of Mickey that he couldn't even be on screen in the Bonkers show. And then here at the parks, for the most premium of Disney fans who get to be at the parks, they see Mickey Mouse like in supplication to Bonkers singing his song. It works way better for Bonkers to be a Mickey fanboy. If you make Mickey a fan of Bonkers, it's just so fake. It
was nothing but a promotion. In fact, they ended the live show by singing the Disney Afternoon theme song.
Okay.
But it's just like, it felt really gross. But if I was a kid, I would enjoy being there. And quoting another podcast, I think like Scott Gardner talked about being at one of those Disney Afternoon live shows. And he knew it was all like fake, but he was like, I still don't know about that fat cat. He was like still slightly concerned about fat cats.
They shouldn't be friends with each other.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
But yeah, I just want to give everyone a brief Bonkers update because I did find more Bonkers evidence in the world. He did exist.
Thank you.
He did exist.
We're going to popularize Bonkers so much.
It's got to come back now.
But they did. So they did do the Albert Einstein tongues ticking out joke.
Though. That's right. Was that during the bit with this selling him things?
When
bit?
Yakko said you didn't smile, it's then they just drew the photograph of him with his tongue sticking out.
I like that they essentially made history. That's a fun little touch.
Yeah, which in reality that happened in 1951 at his 72nd birthday party.
So 50 years later.
Yes, yeah, a long time after this happened. But again, this is just like a smattering of history.
Nobody knows what he looked like as a young man.
Boy, this is a lot of hysteria, actually. This would be a hysteria segment.
You can see why they did hysteria next.
It's a light turn, not a hard turn.
So Einstein is still down on himself, discovering the theory of relativity. He calls himself Stupid Einstein Dummy Boy.
I love that.
And then we get another song, which I was not expecting.
I absolutely forgot this song.
It's a fun song, but it's a very... I will use the pretty clever many times throughout this episode because this is a very clever show.
I mean, this turn was so clever. I totally forgot it, and it made me go like, wow, just to figure out that E equals MC squared could look like Acme backwards, kinda, is very impressive.
It's somewhat convincing, I will say.
Sure.
I do like this payoff, but here is the Acme song.
Whenever we're feeling blue, here's what we always do. When your face is long, sing the Acme song, you'll feel so fresh and new. There's the A that's first, there's a C that's next, there's an M, you're almost done. There's the E, it's last, now spell it out, A-C-M-E, that's fun.
Now backwards! There's the E, that's last, there's the M, it's next, there's C, you're almost done. There's the A, it's first, what's first is last, E-M-C-A, we're done.
Pretty good, Waggle, but your A always looks like a 2.
I forgot what this is leading to, but when Wack was like, let's do it backwards, I'm like, okay, yeah.
We get it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I until he wrote the second M, I was like, oh, okay, right. again, this wasn't one of my favorites as a kid, so it wasn't burned into my memory.
Yeah. They didn't quite annoy him enough. I think they had too much respect for Einstein in this cartoon.
Well, I mean, he survived the Holocaust.
That's
he
true.
Went through a lot.
Well, he didn't know about it in 1905, so maybe they're like, let's not tell him.
I mean, keep it away from Hitler in general.
Yeah.
Is usually that's hysteria, because they had to be more accurate. They actually did have to deal with Nazi Germany, and it's a more depressing show for that.
It really is. But because of this, he discovers what the show says is the theory of relativity, and it kind of ends with like where it's just like they win an award, they all win the Nobel Peace Prize, and Yakko's like, it's not a merit badge, but it'll do, and that's it.
I mean, that's also classic Looney Tunes of just like that. They just end on a little. The best jokes are over at that point. I do love the animation on the shaky hand of Einstein writing the equal sign between the E and the M. That's and also when he says like that he's unlocked the keys to the universe or whatever, when he jumps into the air, you can see like planets around him.
Oh yeah,
it's
that's
a really
right.
good visual for it too. Yeah. But I guess I would hope that Einstein splits the Nobel Prize money with them. That's a big chunk of change there.
Yeah, who knows what they're doing in Switzerland outside of selling cookies?
1905. What
Investing in clocks.
Are they spying for the early FBI there?
They could be. Who knows? But so up next we have our final segment of Animaniacs, the debut of Pinky and the Brain. Again, check out our previous podcast for What a Cartoon about Pinky and the Brain. It's about, 6 months old at this point, but it's there, and it's a good listen. I really enjoyed putting that together.
Yeah. And this, and they just have it from the first one. Like, they know exactly what Pinky and the Brain is.
Yeah, like every beat is there. I will say that Rob Paulson learned to speak a little in a higher register for Pinky to make him seem, I guess, less stupid.
Yeah,
because it's more of he's more of a duh idiot. Although Pinky is a duh idiot.
I mean, he is.
Yeah.
Though I like that he's so in Rita and Runt is just a very slow person who said, like, he has jokes of like, oh, I hate cats, I hate them, but he doesn't realize Rita's a cat. Pinky's brain is melted by television. That's an important distinction with Pinky right from the get-go in this episode, too. Like, it's not that he's just a person without knowledge. It's that he learns the most useless of information, meaning television information.
He's a good device for obscure pop culture facts, and I totally forgot that until we watched that episode for What a Cartoon. Like, yeah, you can put any weird 70s or 60s celebrity in his mouth to say, especially Neil Sedaka.
Yeah,
Neil Sedaka.
Regis Philbin comes up in this one, and he's like a recurring character of the Pinky and Brain.
This is Regis and Kathy Lee era, not even Millionaire era Regis. But yeah, so this segment is animated by Wang, and they are a fairly good studio, but obviously not as good as our masters and gods at TMS, who can do no wrong. So immediately you see there are differences in animation. It's not quite as needlessly ambitious, and it's a little mushier and not quite as snappy as the very snappy TMS animation.
Oh no, mushy's the right way to put. Like, the figures just they don't feel as lively. They just they are more of like line delivery systems, which when you've got a great script like this one has, it doesn't need fluid animation for it. Like, if you're assigning TMS to things, you want ones that have need a lot more oomph to it, like Yakko's World or something. So I get them giving it to one of their B studios like Wang.
Yeah.
And the opening's ACOM, I think it is.
Oh, really? Yeah.
That's according to the Warner's wiki anyway.
You could see where TMS would try super hard, even harder than they should at certain openings. So, and other animated pieces where this opening, it's pretty well done. It's different than the one that you would see in later episodes and the one that they would kind of cut up to make the Pinky and the Brain series intro, where in the TMS version over the, gee, Brian, what do you want to do tonight? He's running in his wheel. It's like you truck in on the cage and he's like running in his wheel. Like, we don't actually see the Brain and Pinky in this version until he says, take over the world. So there's
and the take over the world pose on the TMS one is so much better.
A lot stronger, yeah.
Well, and the real difference you can see between TMS and ACOM, I know this is just the TMS Love Fest, but TMS, if you've seen Akira or just about any of their other things, they are incredibly good at a first-person camera going down or reversing through hallways. For them, the move from the cage out through the doors to the front of the Acme Labs, like ACOM was tasked with that same thing in this opening, and it's just not as good. They do their best with it, but they kind of whiff it, I'd say. And then plus this opening is sung by the Warners, which that connects it. I think that shows they didn't have as much faith in Pinky and the Brain. You know? They're like, oh, kids need to know that the Warners approve of these characters, and they think Pinky and the Brain are cool, and they love singing about how they're dinky.
I prefer the more ominous singers, but let's hear the Warners version of Pinky and the Brain.
They're Pinky and the Brain, yes, Pinky and the Brain. One is a genius, the other's insane. They're laboratory mice, their genes have been spliced. They're Pinky and the Brain, brain.
So one thing I read about, I can't remember if it's in our episode we did for Pinky and the Brain, but the original concept for the lyrics was going to be a song parody of Singin' in the Rain.
Oh, I
so
didn't
it's just
hear
like
that.
they're Pinky and the Brain, just Pinky and the Brain. One's a genius. You know how it goes.
That would fit with that world.
Yes.
Yeah, that would fit with what stylistically for the show too.
But they weren't allowed, they couldn't clear that song, so they had to think of a way to rework those lyrics into a different song. And I think tonally, this sort of downbeat, darker version fits the characters more. It's ultimately a premise built around failure.
Yeah. Failures at world conquering.
Yeah.
So you need the sound of comedic world conquering, and that a kind of ominous march of dun 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 dun, because that's the kind of subjugation Brain wants over the world but can never achieve.
And for how often they use the Pinky and the Brain theme to score the episodes, different versions of it, it would not fit to have the Singin' in the Rain music as Pinky and the Brain's theme.
No, I mean, you hear some leitmotif of that every Pinky and the Brain segment. I think it gets too distracting.
I think they were trying a little too hard to be clever with that Singin' in the Rain stuff.
I think you're right.
And I have to wonder if Pinky and the Brain were named because they're that'd be a good sound alike, right?
Oh,
Who
yeah,
knows?
you're right.
Who knows? To rehash some of the things we talked about on that episode, so we have Maurice LaMarche as the Brain. He is doing his Orson Welles impression. It's I think he says 80% Orson Welles and 20% Vincent Price or something like that. But essentially, he, when warming up his voice, would basically do the Yes Always Orson Welles outtakes to crack up people in the booth and to warm his voice up. They loved it so much they wanted an Orson Welles voice character on the show. So immediately they thought of him for this role.
There's nobody else you could get. I mean, he's so good of it that he replaces Vincent D'Onofrio as Orson Welles in Ed Wood the next year in '94.
Vincent was pissed off about that.
Hey, look, I love Vincent D'Onofrio, but he probably can't do a voice impression of Orson Welles better than Maurice LaMarche.
The first time I saw Ed Wood, I was like, that's the Brain. That's the Brain dubbing that guy's voice. I know this voice.
Yeah, but
blew my mind.
Oh God, the wine.
The one thing I'll say is I think they're both a little flatter than they would be, the voices, but they're not quite understanding what their range can be as characters.
Yeah, I think they're still figuring out the characters. Simpsons in season 1, they don't fully grasp their characters. It's I do think Yakko, Wacko Dot, they're basically who they're going to be throughout the whole series. But I think by season 2 or as they were making more episodes, they came to know Yakko is kind of Rob, and Wacko, the actors were becoming more in tune with the characters too, and the writers were writing more to what they knew the voice actors could do.
The segment begins with a very familiar Pinky and the Brain setup in which they're both in their cage, and the Brain is working on something while Pinky is distracted by something stupid. And in this case, it is quality sitcom programming, an episode of The Honeymooners, which this episode is actually based on. Somehow I missed that in my research, and Henry showed me the episode or parts of it when I came over. So this is based on an existing Honeymooners episode with Ralph Cramden on a game show.
Yes, the Honeymooners episode, you can look it up on YouTube, at least in the United States. It's just up there. It's the $99,000 Answer. That's the name of it, where Ralph Cramden gets on a television quiz show and he's asked questions. And the first question, he tries to train for it with Ed Norton, his stupid friend. And he keeps playing Swanee River, but he doesn't say it's Swanee River. And of course, what's the first question Cramden gets asked? What song is this? And he plays it and he has no idea. And he even says, Ed Norton?
Ed Norton?
He says that Norton is the composer. It's a classic Honeymooners gag. And so that's why this is just such smart writing that they're like, they know it's a Honeymooners parody, beat for beat, and that they will make the Swanee River of this Honeymooners.
That's so. I had no idea until now.
And that's a classic episode of the show, too. And hey, if you want to hear him even say his famous line that's quoted in this episode, you better believe he says it in $99,000 Answer as he shakes his fist angrily, implying the metaphor for beating his wife,
yes,
as Fry would put
as
it.
Futurama let us know. But yeah, so already the formula is in place. Like the brain has a plan, and often or always, like Pinky, through the happenstance or just his own observations, like he knows something that will eventually help or foil the plan, but the brain is just being mean to him. Mm-hmm. So the brain is often punished for being mean to Pinky or ignoring what Pinky thinks is important, which seemingly is not important at the time.
Yeah, it shows that Brain can know everything, but his lack of empathy or care for Pinky is what foils him almost every time. Like Gorgetti, he thinks he has every answer and that Pinky couldn't possibly help him other than just being like the easy workhorse who just does all the things Brain doesn't want to do. And then it turns out, no, Pinky actually knew more than you in this case, Brain.
It turns out pop culture knowledge gets you far in life. That's why we have this business. Isn't that right?
Yes.
So, yes, the brain wants to go over tonight's plan. They end up breaking out of their cage. And as the brain is walking Pinky towards his plan, Pinky is distracted again, this time by the game show Jip parody. And I will say the origins of the word Jip were just revealed to me. And I looked it up on, just like a very... academic word website, in that it's like the origins of this word are unclear. It possibly could be a slur for gypsy, but it likely is not. But the thing is, it's so associated with that now, it's better to just not use it.
Yes, yeah. I mean, even quote gypsy is like an insensitive word.
It's like Eskimo or whatever.
Yeah. It's like Romani is, I believe, the term you are to use in polite company. Yes, yeah.
It's just like how this is a more extreme version of this. I won't say the word, but essentially there is a word with the N-word in it, like baked in, that means stingy.
Oh, yes.
And little smartasses would say, like, I'm not actually saying the word. It actually means, like, if you use that word, and I'm not going to say it, we know why you're using it. There's no other reason to use it. You can just say stingy. So
I've never heard anybody say that word without knowing what word is part of Lee before the letter Lee, the word Lee.
Yeah, think of the word you're thinking of and then say Lee, and then you got it. But
it's fucked up that was just a word, and also that it means stingy. So it's also like a negative term. Of course, it's a negative term.
I just don't do it. So we're gonna be saying Jip parody, but as far as I know, it's not a slur. But we're only using it in the context of this game show parody.
Yeah. Now it has a thing to do a parody of Jeopardy, which every single show did in the 80s because it was one of the most popular game shows in America. Jip parody is a funny, smart name for it in your show.
It's super clever because Jip means ripoff, which they're doing a ripoff of Jeopardy, but it's also a parody. So it's just like it's a very clever turn of phrase. Again, pretty clever.
Pretty clever.
As Mo would say. But finally, the brain explains his plan to Pinky.
The plans, Pinky, for the superconductive magnetic infundibulator. Shall I explain how it works?
No, challenge me.
I'm sure I will. By using the infundibulator to deplete hydrogen and promote gravitational collapse, we will produce a magnetic charge from the center of the Earth so strong that every person who has loose change in their pockets will be magnetically drawn to the ground and stuck there.
Eat that brain, brilliant! Uh-oh, no way. What if they take off their pants?
Then We'll have to take over the world quickly. Every item we need is here in the lab save one. The infundibulator. But I know where we can get one. The Farmer's Almanac.
So yeah, this is a plan that would only work in the 90s.
It's pre-Google plan, yeah.
Yeah.
Though he's almost reading how to make a bomb, which that was like, you must have had at least one friend who was like, I have the Anarchist cookbook, I downloaded
I printed it out. Yeah. Now I was also thinking about, like, I just never have change on me because I just use my Apple Pay or credit card for everything. And just, I never have change. But that's a good point by Pinky, though. Like,
yeah, Pinky actually makes a good point for once. What he won't do is make a good point later about the cat in the horn or whatever. But
duck in a hose or whatever.
Duck in a hose,
yeah.
that's it. Yeah, but this one actually is useful, and so Brain has to pretend Pinky didn't correct him. He's like, well, we'll just have to move fast. I'm not wrong. Also, they would have had to Google these things instead of pulling out the Farmer's Almanac. But I like it's the 1993 one. Like, it feels special to see a cartoon that current with the number 1993
Yeah,
on
it's like,
screen.
hey, that's the year I'm in right now. And I remember my grandma would buy me Farmer's Almanacs because they were really cool, if a little, like, unreliable, where you'd be like, I can see what the weather's going to be like in 3 months. Wow. But it didn't really work out that way.
No, well, that was before climate change, too.
That is true. Weather was more reliable. I paused the screen when they were scrolling up through the almanac, and I did see a caricature of Paul Dini by the beer can birdhouse.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, and there's a caricature of somebody else below him. I don't know who that is. All I know is I know what a caricature of Paul Dini looks like because he was Dr. Gene Splicer on Tiny Toons.
That's right.
So that's how I know what a caricature of Paul Dini from the early 90s looks like.
They the animators on that really like to make fun of how Paul Dini looked.
He's a freakish man.
Yeah. Also, for the Honeymooners references that I caught at this time, the infundibulator costs $99,000, the amount that Jackie Gleason is trying to win in that episode, just to make it more clear what they're parodying here.
You can build it with things you find around the home, but how do they get this money?
Pinky, are you pondering what I'm pondering?
I think so, Brain. But where are we going to find a duck in the hose at this hour?
The money, Pinky. I can go on that show and win the money for the infundibulator.
Egad, Brain! Oh, no, but the questions on Jip Parody are incredibly hard. I mean, you have to get every single one right.
Quiz me. Ask me anything.
No. Okay. What is pi?
The ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter having a value of 8 decimal places of 3.14159265. But ask me something difficult, Pinky.
No. Oh, okay. What TV character says, bang, zoom?
I told you to stop saying that. I don't care who says that.
Ralph Cramden. Ta-da!
So Ralph Cramden never hit his wife on screen, but it is funny to see the person saying bang zoom is the one getting hit.
I had to figure that. It feels almost too mean that he hits Pinky. I feel bad for Pinky getting hit anytime because all he does is support Brain. He saves Brain. We said it in our Pinky and the Brain episode. Pinky risks his life to save Brain. Brain, you figure, would never do that for Pinky. Like, it's just... And so when you see this poor innocent who, he's dumb, but all he does is support Brain, to get smashed in the face with a pencil, it feels a little too mean.
That's why the Christmas special won an Emmy, because it was like the brain goes too far and Pinky's feelings are hurt. And it's a very emotional Pinky in the Brain, so I could see why it won. So yeah, I put in my notes, like, this is the formula that's in place. So Brain will be eventually done in by a detail Pinky identifies, but that he thinks is unrelated.
Mm-hmm. And also something that's in so many P&Bs is Brain has a perfect plan, but then he has to make a plan to get a piece of that plan. So it's not just about, it's a plan on top of a plan usually. Like in this case, he already has his plan to take over the world by creating this super magnet. Now he needs a plan to get the money to buy the key ingredient of this super magnet. Like that, I really like that too. That it the complications just stack upon each other.
Apparently, he had this giant robot suit built though, because it's all ready to go for him.
He can just make anything. I mean, that human suit rules. It's
it comes up a lot in the series when he needs to go out and interact with other people, and the size of his head always comes up.
Yes, yeah. I think I like his scrawny Midwestern dude a little more. With his
the
long
giant legs. Yeah, that's great.
But this suit is great. I mean, it does feel a little like Orson Welles even in the outfit, like a large tuxedoed body.
Should be eating like 3 whole turkeys and 2 bottles of bourbon.
There should be like empty bottles of champagne all around him.
I'm surprised Pinky only got stepped on once by the giant man.
Yeah, you know what?
Suits.
You feel bad for him the one time it happens. Like, he's just helping. Sure, he tied his. I guess in that case, it wasn't Brain stepping on him on purpose. It was that Pinky tied his tail into the shoelace, and so he got stepped on. Yeah.
And so Brain hails a taxi.
Oh, Brain even makes a joke.
Oh,
and he's
yeah.
like, I'm not devoid of humor.
He's trying to meet Pinky halfway, I guess. He goes, "Hi, honey, I'm home." But yeah, the Brain hails a taxi, and the guy's like, obviously asking about his head. And this is one of 2 times where he says, the truth. He's kidding on the square, but it's so ridiculous that no one believes him. The guy's like, "My fault for asking."
I love that. My fault for asking, buddy. Hey, it's all right. Again, dated there, that would have been a Lyft driver who would just say, like, mind if I play my music?
Yeah. Or have a bottle of water. Remember, give me 5 stars. My family is starving.
I am totally fine. That Lyft driver can play whatever music they're going to because I'm putting on headphones anyway.
And finally, we are okay. So actually, if this was like 30-minute Pinky in the Brain, we would have seen like the tryouts for Jip Parody or like the journey there. There'd be a lot more in here, but somehow he just ends up on the game show.
Yeah. Well, and also because of the length of Yakko's world, it kind of throws off the commercial breaks for the rest of the episode. So a commercial break happens in the middle of this short, which would have just been its own full segment.
The act break is the taxi driving off to the studio. But finally, we have Jip Parody.
This is Jip Parody, our returning champion, Alvy. And please welcome Dolores and Brian.
That's Brain, not Brian.
And now your host, Alex Quebec. Let's start with our returning champion.
I'll take ancient shoe sizes for 200, Alex.
Socrates' pupil Plato wore his sandals this size.
What was 7.5?
That's correct, Brian.
That's Brain. I'll take King's name Moshushu for 200.
He ruled less, though, in 1820. Brian.
Who was King Moshushu the First?
Correct. Select again, Brian.
Brain. Isle of Yap for 400.
3 Yappian Island neighbors. Brian.
What are Baikar, Iluk, and Ailing Lapalap?
That feels like it's just a repository for all of the obscure knowledge you have as a comedy writer.
I mean, truly obscure. These are. I think they must be making up the shoe size, though, on Plato.
That had to be made up because, I mean, how would you know? But Mushushu, I think the name of the king was. So Alex Quebec was wrong about that. His reign started in 1822, not 1820. And the Isle of Yap is actually in the sea. It's actually east of the Philippines. It's in the ocean.
Wow,
the Pacific Ocean.
I had no idea.
And I couldn't find the neighboring islands, but I have to assume that they're real because why would the brain lie to us?
It's hey, this Isle of Yap wasn't in the song earlier in this. Yakko missed
That's
it
true.
too.
It could belong to somebody else, though. Who knows?
Yeah, I guess it could have been in like the Philippines section or something. But I love him calling himself "I'm a mouse in a large mechanical suit." He still just keeps saying
and
it.
we do hear the "my fault for asking."
And I guess Alex Quebec is partially a joke on that he is a Canadian, though he's from Ontario, not Quebec. But
different culture, different lifestyles.
And still with us, Alex.
Did you see that recent clip as of this recording of the guy's Final Jeopardy answer was, "We love you, Alex"?
Yeah.
And even the stone cold brain genius Alex Trebek was moved by that.
That was very sweet,
yeah.
Honestly. There's actually a great gag in this about how heartless Alex Trebek can seem as a host on the show. So seeing that moment of him just like, we love you, Alex. Thank you.
He does break. He does break.
It's well, I mean, he's. It seems that he has recovered from his cancer scare. I believe he's on the mend from that. But even so, retirement has to be in his sights now.
Yeah.
So, but oh yeah, and the Warners right before he goes on to the set. That's when the Warners run through, and that just it feels unneeded. Like it's fine if they run through in a Buttons cartoon, but it just feels like you're wasting time in P&B.
It does feel like to just remind the audience, like, now remember, you're watching Animaniacs. This is not a different cartoon. I have to recommend, I think they're still on there. Like a while ago, this year, maybe a few months ago, Nina, my girlfriend, and I watched, on Netflix, they have like one episode of Jeopardy from like every year.
Oh.
And so we watched like the 1984 one. They're a hoot. And I realized like these questions are easy because the knowledge a person could possibly have in 1984 was very slim compared to us with all of the world's knowledge in our pockets at all times.
Oh, wow.
So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Well,
they're fun to watch.
I'll check those out because as a kid in the 80s watching my parents watch Jeopardy, it just seemed like the impossible show. Like,
Yeah.
who could ever know these things? Which I feel like that's why these questions are so impossible on Jip Parody, as a reference to how Jeopardy just seems like a far too challenging show for the average man.
It was
or
the
woman.
least interesting game show that I watched as a kid. Like, this is no fun. You're not spinning anything.
Oh, that Wheel of Fortune's so much more fun.
And we all love Pat Sajak today, don't we?
Yes,
So-
a truly avant-garde figure.
Yes, he's up there with James Woods as great Americans. So there's a montage of various answers, and we do get a shout out to our man Regis Philbin, which would be a common like callback on Pinky and the Brain. Before his millionaire superstardom, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, they were in love. They just love like kitschy, tacky pop culture figures, and Regis Philbin fits squarely into that mold.
I mean, the name is funny too, Regis Philbin.
Yeah,
You're just
what
like-
even is that?
But he's also just like this intense figure who's just famous of like, I'll be on any television show. I'm Regis Philbin. Like, yeah, he's like it's a tribute to shallowness to talk about Regis Philbin.
And finally, it is time for final Jip parody, and the Brain is, of course, we get the kidding on the square moment of like, what do you want to do with your money, Brain? He's like, I plan to take over the world. And then we hear the My Fault for Asking.
My fault for asking.
And finally, we have the Brain's undoing.
Go, Brain! Not! We almost got all our money! In the words of...
Now, for $99,000, here's the final Jip parody answer. In the category Quotable Quotes. This classic TV character is known for saying bang, zoom, right in the kisser.
Who is,
5 seconds.
who is,
2 seconds.
who is, Pinky?
Ooh, that's incorrect. The question is, who is Ralph Cramden? And how much did you wager?
Everything.
Which leaves you with nada. I'm so sorry. And that wraps up our show. Good night, everybody.
So yeah, we come back to the cage. I always like interesting cuts. Like, so it turns out they're watching that on TV.
Yeah,
Why would they want to
the
watch
taped
that?
version. I love. I love hearing Alex's that version of how insincere he sounds. He's like, "Oh, that's everything. I'm so sorry." Like he does. I do think he's sincere, and don't think Alex Trebek is like a jerk. Definitely
He's
not.
got like a super professional demeanor though about him.
Yeah, I always like. He's like, well, okay. That's right. Like he is not a guy who has goof arounds. He's the opposite of Steve Harvey.
That's true. He's not like mugging at the camera.
Yeah, or Pat Sajak, who thinks he's like some big deal or whatever. No, I mean, maybe too, where I'm just thinking of Will Ferrell's so bottled up, angry version of Alex Trebek.
Oh
and
yeah,
tired.
where it's like it's not even a impression really. It's just like a spiritual impression. Like this is what Alex Trebek must be going through every day.
But yes, that him saying Pinky, that is the exact end of that Honeymooners episode,
Yeah.
except he said Ed Norton.
I'm glad that I know this now. Yeah, a new layer has been revealed. So we talked about this on the What a Cartoon, but a big element of Pinky and the Brain is like, well, obviously you know they were going to fail. So a lot of the series is sort of like has the gimmick of a mystery where you're like, what will take him down? They always have to have a fun hook that will take him down, like something that has to pay off later. Often it's very obvious. Sometimes it's surprising. So I think like this is a very well written one, especially because they are stealing from a good Honeymooners episode.
But so smartly with Honeymooners, by making Honeymooners the joke in there, they're letting you know, we know we're stealing from Honeymooners. That's the joke.
And they're owning up to it, which is nice. But it took me 26 years to realize that. So thank you.
I also like the name of the other shows, like Turning Pyramid into Pile of Mud. That's very funny.
And Wheel of Something.
Wheel of Misfortune, which that's the easier
we've been there
joke.
before. It's no Wheel of Fish.
Now that's, I could go, it's making me hungry for fish.
Sushi time. But yes, that's the end of the Pinky and the Brain segment. We have one more segment.
Oh, speaking of wheels.
Yes, the Wheel of Morality. I think one of the most subversive things on a kid's show in 1993. So let's hear all about the Wheel of Morality.
It's that time again.
Do you get our rabies shot?
To make bubbles with our spit?
No, it's time to learn the day's lesson. And to find out what it is, we turn to the Wheel of Morality. Wheel of Morality, turn, turn, turn. Tell us the lesson that we should learn. Moral number 2. And the moral of today's story is... if at first you don't succeed, blame it on your parents.
How deep?
I don't know about you, but I'm touched.
In the head.
Nice. So it may seem pretty tame now, but we are basically maybe 5 years away from, and knowing is half the battle. And like, hey, kids, don't stick stuff in your mouth. Like all of those things where it just be like, we got to teach the kids. We are being told we have to have a moral. We need like a little PSA at the end. This is mocking that. Like 2 kids of that era.
Yeah, who had all, that the last 30 seconds is just He-Man telling you some story, or just all these covers, which the morality, they weren't doing these morals at the end out of a sense of like duty to help children. They did it because their shows were barely legal as it is, according to steal a line from Lindsay Nagel. But the Wheel of Morality too, I totally see it in Tiny Toons. When we did Tiny Toons and I rewatched a bunch of old ones, they would end with like Plucky having to say, well, I guess I learned my lesson. And they'd still have to explain it. Like the earliest ones especially were very much like, okay, your characters actually have to learn a lesson. And it just felt so stapled on. The best one, the most irreverent they got with that is that Plucky would just like at the end of one of them scream to the skies like, okay, I get it. I was wrong. All right.
And then I remember like weird, environmental episodes where it's good that they had them, but showing things to an 8-year-old kid, like here's an episode about whaling. It's like, okay, I watched this. What am I supposed to do? I know killing whales is bad now, but what do I do with this information? I am 8 in Ohio. There are no whales.
In 20 years when you could become a whaler, you won't.
I changed my mind.
Yeah. So instead, by making it just like a complete mocking of it, of like, here's a freaking wheel and it'll tell us what stupid thing we gotta learn.
It's so arbitrary, and I love the Yakko just like Wheel of Morality, turn. Like he doesn't care. It's just like they're checked out. It's something that they're obligated to do.
Their lesson is meaningless too.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually about being an angry boomer who's mad at mommy and daddy
for messing
not
them
giving
up.
you enough attention.
In some cases, you can blame your parents.
I am totally. This moral is important to me.
Yes.
I agree with it.
But I will say that my favorite Wheel of Moralities are when they win money.
Yes,
like they win $5,000 or a trip to Tahiti. I like that there are prizes.
That's great.
On the Wheel of Morality.
I always, because you wonder like how much they're going to mix it up. Well, the first time you see it, which this is the first Wheel of Morality, you see that there's free the prize ones, and you always wonder, are they going to hit it? And when they do, it did feel really special, like you finally earned something special in these.
That was genuinely surprising. They're spinning the choice. So yeah, that was our episode about Animaniacs. Finally, we got to it thanks to Philip Jacoby. So thank you, Phil, for donating at such a high level and getting us to talk about this great episode. Hope we did it justice for you.
Yeah, this was so great to return to Animaniacs. I could have talked for another hour about it on here. And who knows if we'll return to it some other time, or if we'll do Wacko's Wish could come up someday. I honestly don't want to do it.
In the direct-to-video poll, or whenever we do that, it'll be there. I don't think it'll win, but I think I'll just watch it on my own at some point, just because it's the one Animaniacs thing I haven't seen, and I think I should just watch it.
Before Warner Brothers takes it off of Hulu and puts it on HBO Max at some point. This is great to return to. Oh, yes, I had one last note. I think based on the credits, I think Yakko's World was overseen on the Japan side by Kazuyoshi Takeuchi, who was the lead director on How I Spent My Vacation.
Oh, excellent. You could definitely see. Yeah, I looked up some of the names. So unfortunately, all of the names are Western people on this episode, except TMS gets 3 episode director credits, like just directors. And then Wang gets like, here's the president of Wang, and here's like a layout supervisor, and that's it. Like, what about the like dozens of people? Again, they just don't get credits.
No, I know. It's, credits can only be so long, and they're probably getting away with something on TV rights, but at least for like the OVAs or the movies, they do have to credit everybody.
That was our
overseas.
That was one of our notes on that episode. In case you're not at the $10 tier, is that on the Tiny Toons Adventures, How I Spent My Vacation, they credit every Japanese person working on the film in every capacity, like storyboards and layout and cleanup. It's not just like here's one guy from TMS that was like kind of cracking the whip. It's like no, here's every Japanese name, which was very unusual at the time.
Yeah. So if you enjoyed all this talk, I think you really will enjoy our Tiny Toons What a Cartoon Movie. I'm going out of our normal order of plugs here, but just do it.
The plug reversal, the great plug reversal. But yeah, I guess final thoughts on Animaniacs. There's a lot of it. It's all on Hulu as of this moment, and I recommend you pick and choose. It's not a series you want to go through like all in its entirety, just because some things aren't as strong, some animation houses aren't as strong either. But this was like a very magical time to be alive and into cartoons. Like you just thought things would get better and better. Unfortunately, there was a huge crash after this, and they saw like as much as we love anime, anime was the cheap alternative to spending millions on full animation and voice acting and full music and all union stuff. Like importing anime and cheaply dubbing it was so much cheaper than this, which is why they went that route and why cartoons are much cheaper now. But to be alive between like 1990 and 1997, it was just an amazing time for an animation fan. Just like so much put into everything. And I think this is the peak of that era, of the Warner Brothers era.
Yeah. I think Animaniacs, it holds up better than you remember, especially on the best animated ones. And the stuff that is dated, I think, still makes it fun of like, oh, a Seinfeld joke in here. It was then current. Like, I always think of the Kramer versus Kramer one in there. But, also, since it's just on Hulu, if you get to a Mindy and Button ones or just one, you're like, oh, this one I remember is kind of boring. Just skip it and move on to the next one.
When it was 1993 and I was eating fish sticks, I had to just choke them down and watch Mindy and Buttons. So yeah, times have changed, things are better. But yes, Animaniacs is still here, and hopefully the reboot will be good. But so yes, that's our podcast. So thanks again to Philip Jacoby for donating. And if you would like to donate to help our show and perhaps get some rewards in return, please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. If you sign up at the $5 level, you'll get access to every one of these What a Cartoon podcasts and Talking Simpsons 1 week ahead of time and ad-free. And you'll also have access to all of our bonus episodes at the $5 level behind that paywall. We've been working on this Patreon for over 2.5 years at this point, so we built up over 100 bonus episodes that you'll want to hear if you like hearing our voices and like hearing us discuss cartoons. And so what you get at that level, it's obviously too much to list in these plugs here. We don't want to belabor it, but the newest mini-series of the many that are available on that Patreon is Talking Futurama Season 2 Part 1, which is happening right now. So you can hear us talk about the first half of Talking Futurama Season 2 and also the entire first season of Futurama by signing up at the $5 level, and there's so much more happening there. But Henry will tell us what's happening at the $10 level, extra long podcasts every month that are chosen by our patrons.
That's right. For $10 and up supporters, they get the monthly What a Cartoon Movie podcast, where we talk about a different animated feature film, sometimes for over 4 hours. This month, in honor of Disney Plus starting, we're doing a Pixar original, Toy Story, the 1994 cartoon that started it all. And you can hear that one and all of our previous one, over a year's worth of monthly What a Cartoon Movie podcasts, if you upgrade or sign up at the $10 level at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
So I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo. My other podcast is Retronauts, the classic gaming podcast. Every Monday and occasionally on Friday, please go to retronauts.com or look for Retronauts in your podcast machine. We are a classic gaming podcast, and if I were you, I would check out our episode about Animaniacs that we did in January of 2018. We discussed both Animaniacs games. Both are extremely hard. The SNES version is borderline impossible, but they both do different interesting things with the characters. So check out that episode and perhaps subscribe to listen to even more fun stuff. Henry.
You should follow me on Twitter at HENEREYG. Anytime there's new podcasts on either the Patreon or on the free feed, I'm sure to tweet about it. And you know who else will tweet about it? The official Talking Simpsons Twitter account. Follow at Talk Simpsons Pod. That's at TALK Simpsons Pod on Twitter, and you will stay up to date on all the news in The Simpsons and What a Cartoon universe. Follow both of those on Twitter. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks so much for joining us, folks. We'll see you next time for the Mickey Mouse Christmas special, Duck the Halls, and we will see you then.
I'm Yakko. I'm Wacko. And I'm cute.
The first taste of rare bourbon you finally got your hands on. That's nice. At Caskers.com, we make this experience easy. Caskers is a one-stop spirit curator with an impressive selection of exclusive, sought-after, rare, and household names in the realm of premium spirits and champagne. Discover the top flavors of the year now by going to Caskers.com and using code WELCOME10 for $10 off your first purchase. Get $10 off your first purchase with code WELCOME10 at Caskers.com.